Finally out off the play fake. Right down the seam, and it's caught by Dante Thornton. A foot race. They won't catch him. 66 to the house.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
In the pistol.
Mullins, big opening, might be gone. Touchdown, Michigan.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
And that one might have been touched, maybe. Scooped up by the return man, Parker Kingston, and now he's going to turn the corner. There he goes. Kingston to the 50. Still going. Kingston. Touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Wants it all, man-to-man coverage. Douglas is there and holds it in. Touchdown, FSU.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Big 12 opener comes down to this play. Sanders gets the feet set toward the end zone for the game. It is caught by Wester, just like 1994.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Welcome. 365 Sports on this Wednesday. What a bizarre last, 12, 13, 16 hours or so. UNLV was already in a lot of ways involved in what a lot of people were trying to figure out. What's happening with maybe the Pac-2, 7, or whatever it is, and the Mountain West. And we'll get to that. But last night, and I'm usually one that falls for the trolls, the fake accounts. Craig had to admonish me the other day when I said something about Patrick Mahomes and a tweet that was a fake account about Dylan Raiola, because Patrick Mahomes would never say what the tweet said about Dylan Raiola. So I sent out, well past midnight, last night, this tweet from Matt Sluka, the quarterback at UNLV. I've decided to utilize my red shirt year and will not be playing any additional games this season. I committed to UNLV based on certain representations that were made to me, which were not upheld after I enrolled. Despite discussions, it became clear that these commitments would not be fulfilled in the future. I wish my teammates the best of luck this season. I hope for the continued success of the program. I sent that out to the group chat that we have, knowing that at any moment I would get, again, that's a fake account. It's not fake. This is true. We have a lot of different weeds to get to before we get to a slideshow that Paul and Garrett have put together to kind of wrap up what is going on. It's this day and age where UNLV right now is the center of the college football universe with realignment and now with this story.
Yeah, this is really bizarre, but this was kind of bound to happen. Jack described it as this is kind of the first holdout. You could compare it to the NFL, but it's not so much of a holdout as it is he's just leaving. He's just gone. He's going to another school. He was not happy about whatever they told him in his, whatever. There's so many things to do this, but this was inevitable. It was going to happen somewhere. I hate that it happened to Barry Odom, a coach that I personally like a lot. But I guess everybody's got to look out for their own best interest, and he feels like he was lied to. But I don't really know what side to take here because we've got two varying stories of what happened here, and I'm not completely sure what to believe.
Well, I don't think we have to just jump and take a side. I think it's more than fair for everybody to sit back, and I know that's not the way of the world, but to sit back and see what everybody has to say about this. And so far, I'm unmoved by either side that's come out and said what they've said, which we'll get to. I just think this is an unfortunate product of the environment that has been created in college athletics and particularly college football. We knew this day was coming, and there were warning signs that this day would eventually come, and just to see it actually happen was a little bit jarring and startling because as much as you knew this was likely at some point, it's still just crazy to see it actually happen, and happen 1 month into a season where you've got a team that's looking very well like they could be the G5 rep in the college football playoff and are well on their way to having a pretty special season under Barry Odom and maybe even joining the Pac-12 here pretty soon. Like, how could it get any better? Top 25, like all this kind of stuff that can be accomplished, and they're in the midst of accomplishing and beating a couple Big 12 teams. I mean, the list, it's been a busy month for this UNLV team, and to have that just suddenly stopped in its tracks and a main piece of that team just pull himself out of the race because he's not getting his money, like, that's just not something that we see in any other sport. But it is unique to college football because the powers that be created this environment in so many ways, and this is the chickens coming home to roost. As much as I hate it, as much as I think it sucks for the sport, like this, let's say that, this sucks for the sport to have a quarterback just like a month into the season on a really good team say, oh, I'm not getting my money. Like, this is where the NFL fans are like, see, that's just stupid. Like, this is why we watch, like, we got contracts. Guys are playing.
Unions.
There's like, we know that there's rules to everything, health, everything. This is where college football, I don't think, is the best sport in the world right now. I think it is in a lot of other ways, but in this way, this roster management that's constantly ongoing and really has no rules in place. You know, people used to bring up guardrails, used to get like picked on, on social media because it's like, oh, being old and crabby or whatever. It's like, no, I just want something that's got some semblance of an actual organization, where if you're a starting quarterback, you don't just bolt a month into the season and leave your team out to dry because somebody in the NIL side of things didn't follow through on their promise. Now, I don't know, everybody's pointing fingers, but I just think it sucks for UNLV. I hate it for UNLV fans first and foremost, and whoever's on the wrong side of this, I hate it for them as well. If it's Matthew Sluka, so be it, but the whole situation sucks.
Maybe it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try to, if we can, summarize in what is a slideshow that, again, I'm not smart enough to be able to do the slideshow, and that's why we have brilliant people like those who are here today other than me. Former UNLV quarterback Matthew Sluka's NIL representation told ESPN he was verbally promised $100,000 from a UNLV assistant coach for transferring, and that money has not yet been paid. So there's the first thing. Once Sluka enrolled, there was no effort by UNLV's to formalize a contract at that amount. Months after Sluka enrolled, Cromartie, who's the agent, made multiple efforts with staff in the school about the issue. He said the school and collective came back with a contract to pay him over the next 4 months a certain amount of money.
$3,000 per month.
Well, $88,000 less than the $100,000 that he was promised. So $3,000 a month for 4 months. The only money Sluka received from UNLV per Cromartie was a relocation stipend when he came over from Holy Cross. Cromartie said that there was supposed to be more money after UNLV's hot start. Only the initial amount has been paid up front. Now, I believe we have, what is this, Adam Rittenberg is next? More from Bob Sluka, the father of the quarterback. We're a hardworking family to be able to have an athlete live, be able to like this, and don't even really care how much about the money, but there is something else to it. He's not the first athlete to have this happen. Okay, that's the father. They keep deferring. We don't know. You have to wait. Then it was like, well, we're going to have to give him game checks. So that's great. We did not ask for a single dollar more. Sluka added that Matt's living expenses weren't even covered. Sluka, the father of the quarterback, mentioned again, agreed to an NIL deal with the school back in February, received payments despite request, and never asked for any adjustments to the deal because that's been also reported that he did. Okay, I already said that part. Now, this is from Ross Dellinger. Some pretty wild news to start your Wednesday. The story that we've told you about Sluka. Redshirting now, announcing his redshirt after commitments promised to him went unfulfilled. Rebels are unbeaten and the school in the center of the latest conference realignment story. Now, this is again from Ross Dellinger. Nothing was signed, but that coaches promised him $100,000. Brennan Marion, a very highly thought of offensive coordinator, Cromartie, the collective, may not have agreed to the $100,000, but the coaches did. Then this went from a reporter out of that area Per sources, Sluka has been approached with more money to transfer. So we'll get to the conference realignment in a minute. It sounds like to me that somebody may have been promised money, but I also have read more recently nothing was ever signed, Paul and Craig, for the $100,000, but at least the promise. So the agent's an idiot if he didn't get something signed.
Yeah, I mean, always get it in writing, always get it signed, always get confirmation on that before you agree to something. So the agent, and he works for Equity Sports, which is run by Chris Cabot, who has represented Patrick Mahomes in the past when he was with Lee Steinberg. So this agency has people in it that know what they're doing, but Marcus Cromartie is a former NFL player, and he's now an agent. And UNLV either refused to put it in writing or they never got it in writing. But at that point, Matthew Sluka had been in the transfer portal for quite some time when he committed in February. And I remember reading an article about him in On3 and hey, this is the next round of FCS quarterbacks that could transfer up to the FBS and see, what they could do, who's the next Cam Ward kind of a thing. And so I as I monitor the transfer portal, I kept monitoring Matthew Sluka because he had ridiculous numbers at Holy Cross, ridiculous numbers. And he was just kind of there in the portal, and the pieces are moving all over the board. And then he hadn't committed. And then, obviously UNLV had an opening. Jaden Maava went to USC, so he goes there. And then that happened in February. He didn't get there until July because he had to finish his semester at Holy Cross to keep the eligibility in this red shirt that he has. So he got there, and then according to his people, that they just kept pushing the goal line back on when they were going to make the payments. And then according to them, they're like, well, we never promised anything other than this and some monthly payments. So there's somewhere in the middle, or somebody's telling the truth here, but there's a ball dropped here on a lot of people's parts when it comes to Matthew Sluka. And I hope it's not just as simple as, somebody offered him more money and he left, because then that's going to make him look really bad.
I mean, y'all have explained a lot of the details, and to me, it just sounds like both sides are moronic and foolish.
Yeah.
How do you agree to go somewhere and you don't have any guarantee about the money you're about to make? You didn't sign a contract, your agent, and we know that not all of these agents are like the Lee Steinbergs of the world. There's a lot of that wishy-washy, former high school coach or uncle that's a handler that's now an agent or whatever. And I'm sure there's mighty fine people that have turned into pretty good business people in this new frontier of college sports. But I don't think that that's the case for everybody. And in this case, nobody's good at business. Nobody's good at figuring out what the freaking purpose of this entire arrangement was, because one side thinks that, oh, well, you didn't sign anything, so this is kind of what we loosely agreed to. And the other side, they think they've been promised hundreds of thousands of dollars and yet have apparently not signed anything. So to me, it sounds like a program and a school and a player and his family who are in over their heads when it comes to negotiating deals like this. That's my main takeaway from this, and that there has to be some better representation and communication on all sides to ensure that something like this doesn't happen. I understand it was late in the process, so maybe they promised me they won't back out. I'll go ahead and go there, but for the next players that come along, guys, get it in writing. Get some assurances that when you go somewhere, you're getting a certain amount of money and there's no backing out of it because of miscommunication. On the UNLV side of things, I don't know how they thought they were just getting this dude on the cheap and that the money would never come due. I'm sure we'll hear more details about this. I think Barry Odom's a smart guy, so I don't know, but it's obviously one big, giant mess of people believe in one thing and others believe in another, and nobody being on the same page whatsoever. So this is why you need a proper collective, and this is why you need everybody to be on the same page with things like this, because otherwise you might be undefeated and having a historic year and lose your starting quarterback 1 month into the season. So this is a story that you knew was coming at some point, and it's 100%. Just amazing to see it.
100%. And how many more of these do we have right before a bowl season or the college football playoff or a conference championship where you want more money? And then another thing is this. The two backup quarterbacks, D'Angelo Irvin Jr. last year played most of the season as a wide receiver. He's a quarterback in high school from Midwest City, Oklahoma. They've produced some pretty good talent. Cameron Friel Those two guys combined are 2 for 2 for 72 yards. Friel played a lot in 21 through 226 passes, 1,600 yards. But since that time, he's basically thrown 50 passes. Did not play at all last year. So this is who they have. Now, we've known Barry Odom. We've had him on. We've had him on 2 or 3 times. In fact, a couple of times this year. One of the stories that was also reported by a national columnist is that somebody came to his office to share that this story was developing, and he basically said, we don't have any money. We don't have the money. So that's, if in fact there was more money asked for.
Well, I believe that because I do think the whole we're Las Vegas and we're in Las Vegas so we have millions of dollars is way overblown. I don't think that packs nearly as much of a punch. I think the market's great. I think that is something that works in their favor, but let's face it, they're not getting the Big 12 invite as much as they wanted it or the ACC invite or whatever, at least not right now. And they're in the new pack, which is a step up, but we still don't know how much of a step up it really is because we don't know about any TV deal that they've arranged at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if UNLV doesn't have the money because it's just like, oh, it's in Vegas. It's got – no, it doesn't apparently. Like you'd think that they'd have Dana White or somebody in Las Vegas would have this big war chest built up, but I believe Barry Odom that they probably don't have it. So if they don't have it, then what understanding was he under that they're getting this big-time transfer quarterback, albeit late and albeit not one of the top guys, and that they were just working on the arrangement of the money when he came in. And I'm not also lost on this part of it. I wouldn't doubt for 1 second that Hugh Freeze or whoever, and, just because he's the kind of guy you think of that would be tampering or Lane Kiffin's accused him here in the last hours of doing as much. It would surprise me if anybody in the country's calling him as well and saying, hey, buddy, you got that one more year and we can pay you some money. Yep. So go ahead. So I'm not under the I'm not foolish enough to think that that's not also a factor here potentially.
Okay. Here's something, though, like in the realism of how much Matthew Sluka can help you. He's a 48.3% passer at this point in the season. He's 21
of 48.
Yeah. So, look, at the FCS level, he was dominant, an absolutely dominant player. But on the FBS level, through 3 games, he's 21 of 48, and that includes the fact that he has Ricky White Jr., who's one of the better wide receivers in the country, especially at the FBS level, out there playing for him. So, yes, you might go ahead. Yeah, we've got 100. Like, there's a lot of schools that call me like $100,000. We'll give you 150 just because we can. Like, we can do that, but are you getting a $150,000 quarterback? That I don't know because he's 48% on the year, and his completions for the most part have come to guys that are wide open.
Well, they run the ball incredibly well, but he did produce nearly 5,000 yards.
An athlete on top of an athlete. He's a really good athlete.
He's produced over 52 or 300 yards passing at Holy Cross. Now, so there's that story. In the chat room, some of you have your opinions on this. Do you believe anybody? What do you really think is the real story? Because we have seen some of the best national columnists have their take, and, of course, they have their sources. And this is a mess. Now, Craig brought this up because he's right. Back when NIL and the transfer portal and other things started to hit all at once, one of the things that we would bring up, and especially if I said it, get off my lawn or whatever, is that no matter the players and the athletes get the money. I've never been against that. I think it's great. But there has to be structure. It's not the Wild Wild West, and it has been now for a couple of years. The House settlement's trying to figure some of that out. Somebody brought that up in the chat, and they can't even figure it out because they can't come to an actual agreement and make sure it's passed through a judge. So
you reap what you sow. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you reap what you sow, and the system was the way that it was to the point where they can't enforce anything. And they know if they go to court, they're going to lose that lawsuit because they're 0 for 100 in their last 100 cases. At least that's the way that it feels like when monitoring all of the different back and forths in the courtroom. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, not at all anti-player. Hell, we'll celebrate guys getting their goods and think that's long overdue. But my big hang-up all along is the same one that you just mentioned, was just like, hey, this is all great. This is all cool. It makes for a very interesting world, but, like, it's just so sloppy, arranged. And it's just so hard to, like, distinguish what's on the up and up and what's just an empty promise of, like, just, hey, come here and, yeah, we'll have $100,000 for you. And, no, we'll not sign anything. And, we'll just wing it. Like, you just wing it and you see what happens. So There has to be a better way to organize this, but yet what rules can you put in place that actually can be enforced? And that's the big problem is you can't really do anything because every time you try to do something, it gets shot down by another lawsuit. And that's the just messed up position you find yourself in as a sport in college football right now.
Is this Jaden Rashada?
I mean,
in a different way.
Chua, much like
Yeah, that was more of a recruitment. He didn't get the money. He left. He's now.
This
God knows where is he? At Georgia?
Yeah, he's at Georgia.
All right, nice.
Arizona State now at Georgia, waiting his turn there. But yeah, his is different. He apparently had signed paperwork. That's where Matthew Sluka does not, which means I don't know what the legal recourse is there. Something else to consider about Vegas. There's obviously billions upon billions of dollars flowing through Vegas, but to UNLV in particular, no. Because it's not the lifeblood of the Vegas sports scene, obviously. And I think people look back to the Jerry Tarkanian years where clearly had some money running through that basketball program, but I mean that's a basketball program in the 90s, not a college football program now. And who owns everything in Vegas? Are they Vegas natives? For the most part, no. They're corporations, they're big things. There's no Joe Caesar that owns Caesar's Palace. It's not, I know there's the Wynn and all that, but that's still another big, corporate structure. So until those people have an interest in UNLV, the big, Phil Knight type money that we roll into UNLV is not going to be that big.
Yeah, there's a lot of money in Las Vegas that's not apparently in their NIL fund for football, and that's not a knock on them. It's just that's a reality check, I think, when you hear UNLV's exploding and all this. Love that fan base, think that they're, going to be happy with the pack and all of that if that's how it works out or whatever the situation may be. Glad they're at least getting some attention. But, yeah, this is a really bad look at a time when you should be celebrating and loving every minute of this season and the possibilities off the field, and instead you've got – the UNLV Jaden Rashada story, basically. Although with the Jaden Rashada story, I mean, he had it in writing. He had a lawsuit ready to go, and he had a lot more money on the line. He had hundreds of thousands of dollars that were promised to him, that he received. He had millions that were promised to him, millions that he never received, and nearly 10 was what the figure was, I believe, that eventually we learned about. So, yeah, I mean, he took that to court and got out of his NIL with his letter of intent with Florida. And so that was a much bigger story because he's a much bigger quarterback prospect, and that was a much bigger actual contract, whereas this was a guy who was attractive late in the portal, who's got some game to him, but is not a total package NFL quarterback, but was good enough for what UNLV needed, and just there wasn't the type of, I guess, agreements and such in place. This sounds like it was all just talked about over dinner or something. We'll work on it later, and then they never worked on it later or something.
Well, Laura Weiss, doesn't the kid have a scholarship? What was he doing with the money he was getting through the scholarship? Because players get money, the cost of tuition, etc., but this is something separate, so no matter what he was getting or not.
Yeah, everybody else gets that.
Everyone gets that. Even
all
if
his
you're
teammates get that. Yeah, he's paying for his books are getting paid and his lodging and all of that. But that's what you typically negotiate in the NIL deal. You would be like an Arch Manning or someone like that. Be like, yeah, I'll come to your place, but I want this apartment downtown. Caleb Williams had the big old nice apartment in L.A. You agree to those things and you sign documents and you arrange those things and you don't just kick the can down the road like they apparently did here with nobody actually in agreement on anything. But, yeah, the scholarship has little to do with anything because every one of his teammates has that scholarship. So this was NIL. This was extra revenue, extra money in his pocket for coming to UNLV and for being the quarterback. And it's just the structure of it all that was a complete mess because there's guys playing quarterback right now. I mentioned one of them, Arch Manning. I guarantee you Quinn Ewers. I guarantee you a bunch of dudes in Ohio State, a bunch of dudes at Alabama. They are working under hundreds of thousands, if not multi-million-dollar agreements that has nothing to do with their scholarships.
Nothing.
And that's what we're talking about here.
All right. Now, the other part of UNLV being the college football universe is still the story about what's going to happen when it comes to the Pac-12.
Before you jump into that.
What?
This just in 2 minutes ago.
No!
From Yahoo Sports.
Oh, my God.
UNLV running back Michael Allen announced he's redshirting and transferring.
Oh, my God.
Well, I don't think that's like a dagger like the Sluka. I think that's just the redshirt rule coming into play there. I think that's that's going to start being a headline that we're going to see a lot in the coming days. But that is very fitting timing-wise, Paul, since we're sitting here talking about it. But
108 yards.
I think this is more or less like
he's not playing.
I need to preserve my my year.
Yeah.
I'm not getting my NIL.
Well, you don't have to enter the portal.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I mean, you can redshirt, but he can he's just saying he's going to enter the portal.
Yeah,
he
but
wants to leave.
you can redshirt. Now I don't know what the school will do that if you say you're not going to play anymore.
Well, you can't enter the portal till December anyway. So.
Right. So okay.
But he's just letting it be known so that way, guess who's probably in his DMs right now? Some school that's interested. He's getting the party started.
Yeah. Two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, are we?
Yeah. No. All right. Sluka may not have thrown the ball well, he had 253 yards rushing, and also scored. He's the leading rusher for UNLV and Barry Odom so far in their 3-0 start. Now, there's the other story. The Mountain West and the Pac-12 catfight, or Pac-2 or 7.
It's 7-7
Dellinger
right now.
made this note. An update on the other UNLV story as the school deliberates on a conference decision. Mountain West is now offering a new version of a membership agreement to its 7 programs currently in the conference. Sizable signing bonuses. The agreements are only binding if all 7 of the programs sign. One other note. There's also the connection. We've seen this with North Carolina State, and other schools too. UCLA and USC, or Cal and UCLA, excuse me. UNLV's possible conference move, more complicated than others. The Nevada System of Higher Education Board of Regents governs both Nevada-Reno and also UNLV and must approve decisions related to conference affiliation, likely during a public hearing. Now, I don't know yet if anyone has said, no, you can't go. However, there are contingencies like UCLA's paying Cal.
Yeah. I know that it's there. I've seen that played down a little bit about UNLV and Nevada. I mean, it's complicated, but I've seen it played down a little bit. There's nothing that can't be worked out.
And that's the case with anything. Ask Clemson.
I think that's actually the case in most of these types of stories. The unique one was the Cal system because they actually followed through with it, whereas everybody else barks that. North Carolina can't leave without That's no, they just can't leave until North Carolina State has also found a spot where they're happy. That's basically what it is. But at this point, I think, are we really going to sacrifice this epic potential move for the sake of Nevada-Reno? What are we doing here? There's got to be some smarter people in the room. This isn't the level of moving to the Big Ten, guys. This is a healthy move that needs to happen for this program to be what it wants to be as the big epicenter in Las Vegas. And if the school in Reno wants to bog that down, well, then y'all aren't serious about football. I'm sorry.
No, that's very true.
But there's nothing wrong with them at least seeing if they can get some scratch.
Well, If they can slow it down. That's
Dellinger's saying that they're getting offered signing bonus money. Now you're doing that to keep teams in your conference. Gloria Navarez, we've had her on this show, Mountain West commissioner, saying that basically they are to say that the Mountain West was taking advantage of the Pac-12 is what the Pac-12 accused them of with the lawsuit, could not be farther from the truth. The Mountain West Conference wanted to help the Pac-12 schools and student athletes, but not at the expense of our own conference. So this is also kind of convoluted. John Wilner will join us around 4:30 to kind of give us an idea of when they had what was the scheduling, and I hate to use the word, it's a disaster alliance, but they worked together to have a schedule because Oregon State, Washington State needed teams to play, right?
Yeah.
So they worked that out. And so I mean, it seemed like everybody did what they were supposed to do, and now the Pac-12's upset because they're having to pay money for those who are leaving the Mountain West Conference. And I got those figures here in just a second. Greg and Paul?
Yeah, I mean, Gloria Navarez, it's almost like, Jim Phillips said, hey, here's the statement that I keep making about Clemson and Florida State. They signed an agreement. They know it's in the agreement. So suing us for any money that's they say is over the line, well, you read the paper when you signed it, right? This isn't new things. So part of this is all just to muddy the water, I'm sure.
Sure it is. Yeah, sure it is.
But, she's not wrong. I mean, they signed it and now saying that it's not. But if it says, Oregon State, Washington State on that contract, and they knew what was in there when they signed it.
Unless
Greg,
they just made a
you
great
add on to that.
Huh?
You add on to that, and then I'm going to get to the actual figures she's talking about.
I mean, unless they made some grave error in negotiations, I don't see where there's really a case here. I think that this is a shot in the dark by the Pac-12 to try and somehow get a favorable ruling. I don't know all the ins and outs of their arrangement, obviously, but it seems pretty clear on the surface that, yeah, it's an exorbitant fee. It's kind of like the exorbitant fee they put in place to protect themselves from, the Pac breaking away and taking all their teams away to kill them and form a new Pac-12. So, my God, how do you expect the Mountain West to try and play this, knowing full well that was a possibility? They had to put something in place, so it seems pretty simple to me, but I don't know what the language is in the contract, nor would I be able to translate it anyway, so I guess we'll see in court. But based on the couple of lawyer takes I saw that seemed to be neutral, there doesn't seem to be much of a leg for the Pac-12 to stand on here.
They were almost disgusted in the lawsuit.
Yeah, so it's a matter of, this is what you signed up for, and we had to protect ourselves because look what you're doing right now. This is exactly why we had to do this.
So, I don't think they sat down and were like, hey, we'd like to build in this. You guys aren't trying to just steal our teams next year, are you?
No.
No. Why?
We'll help you out then.
Look, we've had that done to us.
Yeah.
The Big 12 and Big 10 and ACC have ravaged us and left us here in the woods. And we don't know what we're going to do. We're just lowly victims here, and we need help. And they're like, okay, yeah, but let's just put that in case you change your mind. And they're like, we're not going to change our mind. We love you guys. This is great. You're
that's okay.
buddies.
Still okay.
And then boom.
So here's the money that apparently is what the Pac-12 will owe the Mountain West Conference. For anyone keeping track, the Pac-12 and 5 departing schools from the Mountain West to pay to the Mountain West for what's happening. $55 million from the Pac-12 2 or 7 conference for withdrawal fees. $17 million per school, bylaws for the exit fees, $5.5 million per school for departure fees, and $167.5 million to the Mountain West Conference. If the number goes to 6 schools to the Pac, the amount goes to $192.5 million. If it goes to 6 schools, that means someone like UNLV or Air Force would leave. That is how much money is involved here with what's going on. Now, they're not going to end up paying all that, but that's right now what's on the table if, in fact, anybody else leaves or anyone else doesn't leave. That's what's being owed to the Mountain West.
Well, shout out to the author that you posted there, JY, on the Big Mountain podcast. They do a really good job.
Yes, they do.
Covering their corner of, the college football internet circles and what they like and the Mountain West and all that comes with, a lot of the Pac stuff and everything else. I liked what I've seen from those guys, so keep up the good work, first of all. And that's a nice little breakdown, and I think that it's a ungodly amount of money, and it should make a lot of people scratch their heads just in general because we're talking about teams moving conferences and hundreds of millions of dollars at stake for what's not really that much of an upgrade necessarily, and you're putting just a lot of movement and uncertainty and things out there with which a lot of money flowing. So it's a wild kind of last few days when it comes to the Mountain West and the Pac reforming and all of that, and it does leave your head spinning a little bit, but you got to feel great if you're the American that you're just like, we're not involved. We closed our doors and we locked up and we're out of this thing. But for the Mountain West and the Pac, I don't know how long this drags on, but it's been very interesting to see the Pac go from thinking that they were a hunter, like an unbeatable apex predator, to very clearly being a lot more vulnerable than they realize and actually the prey, to now Oregon State and Washington State are in charge and they're realizing – we got to be the damn apex predator. We got to go out there and hunt, and they're doing that to their credit. I just don't know how legal it all is ultimately. But all that money is a result of, yes, greed and just the craziness of college football, but also that's what Gloria Navarez and the Mountain West put in place to protect themselves.
Yep.
So, hey, yeah, it's a lot of money. Bet it'll make you think twice before trying to screw us over, won't it? Or bet it'll make you think twice before trying to jump ship in the dark of night. Almost like it makes sense that you had to put that in place to actually make it painful enough that you aren't going to get screwed over at some point. So, yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's the money that you had to have to protect yourself.
Yeah, it's no different than when Texas and Oklahoma made the decision. It was announced and reported by Brett Zerneman that even though they didn't pay what were some of the estimates to leave the conference, there was still exit fees. And then eventually they settled on a little bit more, and I think each paid, what was it, $80 million or so?
Yeah, that's part of this
each.
whole thing too.
And then same thing with anyone else who leaves. In the ACC, with what Clemson and Florida State are attempting to do, there are protections. If you're a conference and you have members, and the members all sign something, at some point they might get disgruntled. At some point there might be a break in the dam or whatever, and you can leave. But you have to have protection on the rights, the TV revenue money, and the ability, if you want to leave, but you leave before the television contract is up, there's going to be some consequences. We'll have John Wilner on at 4:30 to kind of give us his take on that corner of the universe. And then also here in a minute, Taylor McHargue, former Rice quarterback with CBS and ESPN, on a couple of notes. Here's the Utah State AD, Diana Sabu. Reach and rise. Excited for Utah State's future academic and athletic achievements. Thank you to all who have built our Aggie legacy coming fall of 2026. Of course, they're one of the Mountain West teams that have decided that they're going to join the Pac-12.
Well, they're one that has screwed up this entire process because everything was in place, and then they decided to leave. Yep. So congratulations to Utah State, though, on your new move. And, I don't have a ton of man, what's the next thing that happens with this story? I do find it fascinating, though, and it's nice to look at it from an outside view that doesn't include everything Big 12 involved. There's not well, this happens. It's just a completely separate thing, which is kind of refreshing for me to see something that's just its own thing that doesn't necessarily infiltrate the other ecosystems as much. Now, I understand that also comes with territory that not as many people are interested in it because it's smaller schools, but I've found it to be an interesting story regardless, and I do think it's the consolidation that Brett McMurphy referred to as much as a year or two ago on this show, and others have referred to. They'd say this ominous consolidation where Ross Dellinger, you're like, what is that? You think, does that mean the Big 12 and the ACC, and that's the consolidation that the Florida States of the world leave, and then who's Boston College is hanging on to try and remain in the big picture, or a Baylor or whoever? I think there's still some questions out there about that, but it appears as though the real consolidation is happening at a lower level like this, where you're looking at a conference probably dying off at some point in the near future, or just not being at all what it once was, and therefore being relegated to another position on the chart. So this is part of that consolidation, when that word would be thrown around in the midst of all the other more headline, powerful type stories. This is not those, but it is a byproduct of all of those other stories that we talked about the last couple years.
Yeah, this doesn't so much affect in any way the Big 12. You never know about what eventually falls into place. But it is interesting to watch, and it's never ending, and it's a part of what has been about college football. Then the Sluka story with NIL, transfer portal, all that involved, it all just kind of converged at one time.
There is a Big 12 connection, and that is that if Gonzaga gets taken off the board, then that answers that question. If UConn in some fashion gets taken off the board, that answers that question. So it is somewhat related, but not on the front burner by any means.
I don't think, Gonzaga, UConn, basketball, all that would have been great, but now Gonzaga might be taken, and UConn's being, I guess, discussed by the Pac-12 for not just basketball. When we come back, Taylor McHargue, his thoughts about this Matt Sluka story, and his tweet following Colorado's Shedeur Sanders to Wester and the touchdown, the Jonte Wester touchdown, and what he said immediately. Has he changed his mind on all of that? Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, thank you very much for being here every day. When you can, hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't. We would appreciate that. Garrett Ross, Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter, Levi Caraway, helping run the mothership in so many ways, and this is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, LowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and as you've gotten older, maybe used to be. Yeah, Father Time is going to change a lot of things within your body, but at the same time, you might be 45, 50, 55, and none of that affects you. For example, you're just not as active. Your energy level is down. You're lethargic. You don't sleep right. You're active, and you exercise and have a pretty good diet. And yet you've kind of got this little roll around your waist, and you're like, what the hell? Some of that could be low testosterone. The one that gets most of the attention is ED, and or your sex drive is just not the same. It's not the same. It happens. And so Dr. Kent Petty can help you out. If any of those symptoms is something you're dealing with, contact pettycliniclot.com. They will set you up to get your blood work and take care of that for you. And then once they get the results and the testosterone level within your body, they can put you and give you an option to increase your testosterone level and become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Maybe it's you. Remember and contact pettycliniclot.com.
Jeep Adventure Days are here at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Hybrid and save $12,000. Plus, you may qualify for $7,500 in federal tax credit. Don't miss out on this powerful deal. Visit Allen Samuels in Waco today. First responders get an extra $500.
Come by. Let's be friends.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
This is 365 Sports for those of you who are joining us today. And those of you who have been here from day one or anywhere in between. Day one was April 6th of 2020. We have what is called a super chat. You can donate to what we do if you like the content. If you don't, but you like to watch but not want to donate, that's fine too. But there is a button for you, and we have some that have put a lot of money into what we do, and we appreciate that. And so the super chat is available, or any kind of contribution, we would appreciate that. Our sponsors, though, are what we have to help run the show and everything else we have on a day-to-day basis. All right, got him?
Yeah, I got him.
Taylor McHargue, Rice quarterback and CBS and ESPN television college football analyst, joins us on 365 Sports. Taylor, you were, well, no, we'll start with Matt Sluka and also the story at UNLV. As a quarterback, you selfish bunch of people, what are your thoughts about what you've seen from this story today?
It's a mess, isn't it? I mean, I don't think anyone – you've got – just think about all the guys on this team and are caught up in this and look bad. It makes Sluka look bad. His agent looks bad. It's a mess. I think what it's taught anybody that's a player that's evaluating the pool agree.
Okay, hold on, Taylor. We're having some connection.
In general,
problems.
not just in.
Yeah, we're gonna have to we're gonna have to call you back, Taylor. We're having a bunch of interruptions. I'm sorry about that. I know you can't hear us or vice versa. So we'll call Taylor back and we'll start all over again. He joins us on Wednesdays at around 3:40, and he's with us right now. Played at Rice and now a national analyst. And we'll start all over if you don't mind. Thanks for your time, Taylor. So Matt Sluka, just after midnight, or I think 11:26 his time on the Mountain Time, announces he's going to redshirt and look for an option. What were your thoughts when you heard about this story when you woke up this morning?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing, there's just no winner in this. I think everyone looks bad in this. UNLV, the administration, the coaching staff, the Sluka and his agent. I think the biggest thing from the player's perspective is make sure that you've got something in writing. And I think that's probably a life lesson in general. But having a verbal commitment, and it looks like there's been a different player from UNLV from the running back spot that I saw just a minute ago has also announced that he's leaving. This is a theme that I think we hear a lot in the portal these days, and coaches love to say this about, hey, we had this guy get promised X amount of money. Colorado State was in the headlines for this with their quarterback and their star receiver and what was promised. And a lot of this stuff gets thrown around by boosters, by NIL collectives, by coaches that are trying to go around the system to recruit kids. And there are rumors that are out there that this isn't the only time that this has happened. This is the first time, though, that somebody has pulled or decided to use their red shirt and backed out of a season because of something that wasn't met. And I just go back to how sloppy this looks and that there's no real winner here. This is a mess. And I'm hoping the only good news in all of this is you hope that we are close to getting some actual regulation around what's going on in the portal, because the NIL world that we live in now, I don't think this was ever the intention. And the NCAA just being afraid to get sued into oblivion and not having any sort of institutional control has led to, it's just a mess that we're in right now.
Taylor, agents and all this involved, there's really no end in sight for this because the House settlement might wind up going to trial now. There's all this kind of a mess. Do you just kind of think it has to be maybe a grassroots effort by everybody involved to like deal with these problems until there's some sort of rule and governing body that makes any kind of sense in the world?
You would hope so, but I also go back to there is an issue even once you arrive at, let's say you reach an agreement where the schools and these players, they enter into contracts themselves instead of right now where players are entering into contracts with an NIL collective that's separate from the university. If players become employees and they are under contract with a university and there's a rev share model or there's some sort of direct compensation from the school, all of a sudden now you're introducing you have budget issues and constraints on the scholarships that, and a big part of this is tied with Title IX. What happens to your non-revenue sports and your specifically your women's athletics that right now this is solved because NIL collectives, it's all private money. It's not handled by the school. That's a huge reason why these schools are trying to deflect and keep this away from the schools, because at the very top of the college football food chain, some of these programs can afford to pay their star players and even their backups in football and basketball. But most programs, once you get to the bottom of the P4 and effectively all of the group of 5 schools, they cannot afford to pay their roster and include scholarships and also the scholarship limits, which, oh, by the way, are getting increased for all of their non-revenue sports. So there's no institutional control right now. It seems it's a complete free-for-all in the portal world. I know the coaching staffs they hate it because they're having to re-recruit their own kids as well. And I don't think this is the only time that we'll see this. I think this is the first, the last few years, there's been a lot of firsts. And I think this whole Sluka and UNLV debacle, it's probably not the only time we'll see that this season, where promises will not have been met and kept, and guys will either forfeit mid-season or they'll sit out bowl games and conference championships like we saw a couple years ago with Central Florida.
And then Michael Allen, the running back, said that expectations for opportunities, unfortunately, were not met. I'm excited to continue my football career. I'm not sure if that means expectations for opportunities. He didn't enough carries, so he's not getting enough money. But, and again, this could be just like break out into a lot. What about Barry Odom and UNLV? And they have this really nice start going, and right now would be perhaps the group of five or whatever you want to call it, conference representative in the college football playoff, and then maybe they're going to be just fine and guys step up and get better. What about all of a sudden this week when you have the conference realignment story, you have the distractions in front of his program?
Well, I just go back to, again, it's a mess for the school. And I guarantee you UNLV is not thrilled that they are being sort of dragged through the mud, so to speak, and they're on all sorts of headlines for something that is really a stain on their reputation. And there's from the details that we have so far, there's no contract that was in place. There was nothing that was signed. So I don't foresee this going to court. I don't see any sort of world where this goes beyond just the headlines that we've seen so far. But it's a mess right now. I mean, that's the piece that it's just embarrassing for more than anything else. Coach Odom and that staff. Now, the other thing that I think is interesting for UNLV is if they felt like Sluka gave them the best opportunity to win the Mountain West and get to a playoff spot, the amount of money that's on the line for that, they would have figured out a way to raise that money and keep him there. So I do think it's interesting that they effectively, I'm sure very recently, they were aware that he was considering walking and that he was coming up on the end of the amount of games that he could play to keep his red shirt. So I think it's obvious that UNLV just decided internally, we're winning our games. You're completing less than 50% of your passes. From a QBR standpoint, he's one of the worst in the Mountain West. A dynamic player, he's a good athlete, but I think they're saying, we think we could still win the Mountain West and have a really special season, and we don't necessarily need you to do it.
Yeah, and then there have been players that have already tweeted out, I bet so-and-so throws for 150 and has 3 touchdowns or whatever. So there are players taking their side within the program. Now, Saturday night, late night, thought you were tucked into bed because you're a good kid. And yet the Colorado Baylor ending in regulation with Shedeur hitting Wester, and you jump out of your Twitter jungle. And your thoughts about how Baylor, and there was an explanation from Dave Aranda, but your thoughts about that Hail Mary and the setup by the defense.
I texted you guys. I couldn't believe it. I was sitting there watching the game, and there's a number of opportunities where Baylor closes out that game. The credit to Colorado for staying in the fight. They had to make the plays when they were there. My issue, though, was there shouldn't have even been that opportunity. And the biggest thing, and it's what I was texting you guys about, I tweeted it, I've never seen a Hail Mary situation handled that poorly, where you have a timeout. You come to the sideline. The entire purpose of that discussion and that timeout is to make sure that you communicate who the backline defenders are in the end zone and to swat the ball down. Don't try to be a hero and get an interception. Those are the coaching points every single time. I didn't even play defense, and I know that those are the coaching points on the defensive side of the ball. And then you line back up, and they decide to bring pressure, and they're pressing on the outside. And if there's one thing that we know from Colorado, there's a lot of things they don't do particularly well, but their skill players on the outside are some of the best in the Big 12. LeJontay Wester is an unbelievable receiver. He starts almost everywhere in the country at receiver. Doesn't matter whether he's at Colorado or not. And you've got him pressed up on the outside, and safety help doesn't get there. We've all seen the play, and I know your audience knows this better than anybody. Just it's a calamity. I've never seen a Hail Mary handled that poorly. And now for Baylor, that's one of those losses that, for all the issues that they've had, and this was a long off season for them, that's the kind of game where a win propels you forward. You feel really good about going into the rest of the season and going into conference play the rest of the way. But that loss Now the challenge is pick yourself up off the mat, and how do you make sure that this doesn't snowball?
Yeah, I think that's the question. That's what we're waiting to see on Saturday, because I feel like they are good enough in this Big 12 where anybody can beat anybody, except for maybe Utah can beat everybody. It's all about how they respond this weekend against a very good BYU team. Taylor, your thoughts on what happened with the Oklahoma Sooners against Tennessee? Not so much the loss as the quarterback situation. Jackson Arnold clearly has not performed well up until this point. Michael Hawkins comes in and seems to give them a little bit of life. I know Joel Klatt had like a whole breakdown on like how this isn't really Jackson Arnold's fault. This is the play calling and Seth Luttrell and all of that, the blocking schemes. What do you see, and what did you think about Michael Hawkins coming in and now being named the starter, at least for this week and moving forward?
Yeah, I think you're looking for a spark, right? I mean, bringing in Hawkins at that point in the game, Jackson Arnold, there were a couple opportunities. One of them wasn't his fault. It was a fumble. But the opportunities that they had that their defense created where it got them short fields and it looked like Oklahoma was going to be able to get back in the game. And Jackson Arnold and the offense gives it right back. And Jackson Arnold, to me, has looked a little bit overwhelmed through the first part of the season. But I also think, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, it goes beyond Jackson Arnold from a procedure standpoint and just the operation of the offense. They have not looked clean all season. You've got guys running into one another. You've got offensive linemen going in the wrong direction. There was the clip a couple of weeks ago where the left side of the offensive line is in slide protection, and you've got one guy releasing as though it's a screenplay. Just miscommunication all over the place on offense. And I thought that the change late in the game to Hawkins was you're trying to create some sort of spark. It's obviously not working with Jackson Arnold. And I thought that score is a little bit misleading because it felt like if Tennessee had kept their foot on the gas, that ends up being a 4-score win, maybe worse. And there's some garbage time points that score looks a little bit closer than it really was. But it was also, I just came away really impressed with the physicality from Tennessee and that defensive line. I think for a long time, Vols fans have this is the kind of team that they've been hoping for. That roster is starting to look more. They're not there yet, I don't think, but it's close. They're very they look very similar to what a Georgia and an Alabama type roster looks like from the top down, and especially in the trenches.
Taylor, what were your thoughts on Hugh Freeze throwing his quarterbacks under the bus after the game last week?
Yeah, I hated it. I mean, it was those are the kind of things that lose the locker room. And there's always a way to communicate. The point that he was making on we have guys open, we need to take care of the football. There is a way as a head coach to deliver that is saying exactly that. Hey, the opportunities are there. I believe in these guys. We just have to clean up turnovers. And when the opportunities are there to be made, our guys know that we have to step up and make that happen. But the way that he went about it was, it's not my fault. I don't have to do anything different. It's not the coach's issue. It's these guys that we have right now just aren't stepping up and doing their job. There is no faster way to lose a locker room. And in this day and age also, this is not the 1990s where you can publicly challenge your guys and they're not going anywhere. If you go after a guy that is there basically because of NIL money and they don't feel like they're getting respected in the locker room by their own coaching staff, they're going to leave. And if you start losing your own guys because they don't have faith in the head coach, that is the fastest way in modern college football to get fired. And I also didn't like his comment about, if they play Arkansas another 9 times, they win every time. Mm-hmm. That was just the one time that they get got. I mean, that's a lot of arrogance because as you guys saw a couple weeks ago, that Arkansas team should have gone into Stillwater and beat Oklahoma State. It's a good football team. And now Auburn has embarrassing losses to Cal at home and to Arkansas. Everything that Hugh Freeze is putting out right now in terms of his press conferences and media, somebody needs to get a hold of him and say, let's reel this back in, go through some PR 101, because right now he's not building any momentum with his fan base.
Final thing for me for you, Taylor, the biggest game of the weekend. Any thoughts on Georgia and Alabama?
It's going to be a dogfight. I think Georgia's run through the rest of this conference slate is going to be really determined by, number one, this game, obviously, and then they've got the trip to Austin in a couple weeks after that. You really just want to be 1-1 through that stretch. 2-0, obviously, they've got the capability and the talent to do that, but those are both road tests. I think if you split those, if you're Georgia, that's the goal. But just want to see also from Georgia, do they clean up some of the offensive issues that they had against Kentucky a couple of weeks ago where they never got anything going explosively? And for Alabama, I think they're going to try and turn this into a rock fight, try to dominate time of possession, run the football as best they can, utilize Jalen Milroe's legs. But just as a fan, I can't wait to watch this one. This is going to be a really good football game.
What do you have this week, Taylor?
Back with CBS, so we've got San Diego State and Central Michigan Saturday afternoon. So my first trip to Mount Pleasant, Michigan.
Well, enjoy it. Is the weather still like we went to Nebraska? Craig and I went to Nebraska Friday and then was there Saturday, and it was still very warm and muggy. What's it like getting up closer to the north in Michigan?
Yeah, I'm hoping for a cold front. We had Western Michigan a couple weeks ago, and it was still hot, but I think it's actually supposed to start to cool off a little bit. Highs in the low 70s, high 60s, start to feel a little more like football weather. But, yeah, I mean, I'm based in Austin, and you guys know in Waco we need ready for some better weather here. It's too stinking hot.
Yeah, I look forward to that, too. We were hoping to be a little bit cooler in Lincoln, but it was like 90 and muggy. And what an atmosphere. Have you ever been to Memorial Stadium?
I have not, but it is one that I would love to go to. And you talk about loyalty to that fan base. It's been a long time since that team really had much to be real excited about. And the sellout streak that they have looks like one of the best environments in college football.
I think that Raiola kid might have something to him, Taylor. I don't know. I'm no scout, but I think he might have something. But in all seriousness, I think Luke Altmaier's been a great story that kind of flies under the radar a little bit as well. But, yeah, you should definitely get your way up there because it's a one-of-a-kind experience.
Yeah, I'm with you on Luke Altmaier. I think Illinois is one of the best stories of the season, and that's not a fluke. That's a good football team. And I think they are the line against Penn State doesn't make any sense to me, but I also don't know what I'm talking about.
Hey, I have one more quarterback question. Have you watched, and I know it's early, and it's a franchise that has ruined quarterbacks, but have you seen what Jaden Daniels is doing early on with Washington?
I watched the Monday night game, and the throw that he hit late to Terry McLaurin from a rookie, from any quarterback, from a rookie to stand in, he knows he's going to get hit in the face and just drops a perfect ball in the end zone to seal that game. Man, those are the things, and those are the reasons why we're seeing so many rookie quarterbacks play now, because you look at what's happening in Houston and what's going on now with Washington, and you have rookie quarterbacks that they step in, and all of a sudden, it's like, man, that guy looks like he's been playing for 2 or 3 years, and it doesn't always work that way. Look at what's happening in Carolina with Bryce Young, and I know it's a totally different situation, but the way the cap works now and the new collective bargaining agreement, they're going to throw rookies in straight away, and if you catch lightning in a bottle with like a C.J. Stroud, then there's your guy. But man, with just very different than the model that it used to be, where you sit a guy for the first couple of years. That's not always needed anymore.
Yeah. Taylor, thank you, man. Have a great broadcast in Michigan. Taylor McHargue with us of CBS and ESPN, former Rice quarterback. Love his takes with us, opinions, and more. He jumped out of the text room with us on Saturday night following that 40-yard bullet from Shedeur to Wester, and what a throw. By the way, Michael Allen, the running back at UNLV, my decision has no ties to NIL agreements. This is due to on-field opportunities. I did not receive a dime from any UNLV collective.
Yeah, he has like 200 yards rushing in the season. So this is what I was saying earlier. Yeah. This is just odd timing, but it's the timing you're going to get when we're 4 games in. This is when you typically start to see guys making their decisions on whether they're going to redshirt and what they might do in terms of their big picture future, like a Matthew Sluka is not only, hey, I'm sitting out, but I'm going to also be in the portal here pretty soon. So, yeah, I mean, that's to be expected somewhat, and I don't think that's any correlation at all. So glad he cleared that up for anybody trying to connect that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Kevin Sweeney made this again. Never got any signed documentation for his client. We're talking about Cromartie for Sluka. Didn't reach out to the collective at UNLV until late August. Wasn't a registered agent in the state the client he represents plays in, which is a misdemeanor. If you do a deal and you're not registered within the state, even though there's a federal law about agents, that was passed after this here with Sluka entering and enrolling at UNLV.
There was also some of the language that UNLV was trying to dance around in terms of like making sure they didn't violate anything, and that's what prohibited them, even though we know like full well everybody's blowing past these. They all got their little loopholes and whatnot, but like it sounds like UNLV was trying to say, well, we abided by the letter of the law and did everything we were supposed to, and that's like some of their defense. But yeah, I just go back to pointing the finger at everybody. Like, I don't know how I guess you just thought you landed a sweetheart of a deal of like, Matthew Sluka's coming. Like, we didn't guarantee him anything. We'll give him a little bit of money, like $3,000 that'll maybe pay rent. But other than that, like, he's just going to come in and be our starting quarterback. I guess that's what they thought. And then on the other side, hey, we got nothing in writing and nothing actually signed, but we should just be expecting big chunks of payments from UNLV moving forward. It's a drop ball on all sides, and a program that needs to, I guess, probably revisit their NIL a little bit, and also a warning to players out there and their families of get some actual real representation that knows what they're doing.
You know who's been saying that from day one is Darren Heitner, who we had on the show. He's an attorney in Florida, teaches NIL at the University of Florida. We've had him on, and he's made that like he's been like, guys, girls, come on. You have to do this right or you're going to mess everything up. So be careful with what you're doing. Now, UNLV has released this statement. This is per what's going on. Football player Matthew Sluka's representation made financial demands upon the university and its NIL collective in order to continue playing. UNLV Athletics interpreted these demands as a violation of the NCAA pay-for-play rules.
That's what I was saying.
As well as Nevada state law. UNLV does not engage in such activity, nor does it respond to implied threats. UNLV has honored all previously agreed-upon scholarships for Matthew Sluka, conducted its due diligence, and will continue to operate its programs within the framework of the NCAA rules and regulations as well as Nevada state laws. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying, is that they're saying that they were playing by the actual rule book that nobody really seems to actually play by. So good on them for that. But, again, I think we've got our fill on Sluka's statements and things like that. It's a very interesting story. It was one that was inevitable, even though I think we all hoped that it wouldn't actually turn into as much of a mess as this story has turned into, although it can be easily cleaned up. He'll go somewhere, get his bag, and play somewhere next year. And UNLV, I mean, I don't know if they can clean up the entire mess on the aisle, you know, in time to continue this season on the path that it started on, but we'll see how they hang in there with that. But yeah, it's just a lesson learned for everybody involved in college football and the NIL game, from the family of a prospect to the school itself, that you need to have actual things in writing and actual agreements that aren't just like, yeah, we'll work on that later. You know, the season's ongoing. I don't know. Everybody's kind of got deniability here, but they're all at fault as well. So, you know, that's for everybody to clean up their own shares of the mess. But, yeah, let that be a lesson for everybody else out there.
All right, we have John Wilner in about 25 minutes or so. But guess what? We have a couple of Big 12 pods today. Craig, which is the one that includes Iowa State, K-State, KU, and West Virginia?
The Big 12 North.
Big 12 North pod. We'll have that, plus there's a reporter who covers the Mountain West Conference who we might add to our mix a little bit later on, plus Zach Gelb from Infinity Sports Network. He will join us at 5 on many things college football. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club, home game this weekend. All sorts of amenities. A chance for you, if you aren't a member, to enjoy all of what you get to be a part of the Baylor Club. And that's not even because it's a game day weekend. First of all, they have a tailgating spot, HEB, in fact, a part of that. They'll have memberships available. But the Baylor Club gives you, if you want to host a big-time event, you get, obviously, the opportunity at a better price than if somebody else from outside came and said, hey, I want to do something. We host a banquet every year in mid-May, and they are spectacular with the customer service, those who are setting everything up, the views from where we are, and the food is also just delicious. And it's not one of those banquets that we host that it takes forever for everybody to get their food. It takes 30 minutes. It goes by very smoothly. They have multiple servers. It's great for that, no matter what event you may have, even maybe weddings, etc. And the food is fantastic because they have state, highly ranked, elite chefs. There's that word, Paxton. I use elite when it comes to everything that's really, really good. And on top of that, if you have a business meeting, they have opportunities for you to have those. And then maybe if you want to have a drink or two later on in the evening, you can do that. Food, amenities, beautiful views. Also of inside McLean Stadium, the Baylor Club. Memberships available. Contact Mike Mosel for more information.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select, Choice, and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
So Craig Smoak, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, came up with this idea because we have guests who analyze or broadcasters, writers, etc., that cover teams in the Big 12 and elsewhere around the country. But because the conference is so damn big now, it's 16, to cut it into 4 teams, 4 pods. Yesterday we did the Big 12 South, which is Oklahoma State, TCU, Tech, and Baylor. We have maybe 2 pods today, and this is the first one. Iowa State, K-State, Kansas, and West Virginia. We start with a team that's under the radar. Iowa State, 3-0. They had the really nice win against Iowa at the buzzer, and they're bludgeoning people. They're 3-0, and it's kind of like, in a way, quiet who they are, which is kind of like the way Matt Campbell probably likes it.
They're not under the radar for very much longer.
They're 18th in the country, yeah.
They're ranked now. They're winning games. They look like, they're playing exactly the style of football that Matt Campbell loves, which is efficient. They're very efficient. And they're a team to be reckoned with here on the way out. So they're as big a contender as anybody for the Big 12 crown right now. They're guys that got a lot of playing time last year and looked good, looked better this year. They were able to keep most of the team together, add some pieces. Really love what I've seen from Iowa State. And they didn't put too many eggs in the Iowa basket, which I think has happened to some teams before, because you play that early rivalry game. It's such a big deal. The the Cy-Hawk game and all that. They won the game, and then they didn't have a letdown afterwards. And now they get Arkansas State, which is not like the pinnacle of their games this year.
No. They play at Houston.
Houston, okay. Who plays Arkansas State?
They just beat Arkansas State.
Beat them. They play Houston, so this should be able to roll along.
Yeah, they pummeled the hell out of Arkansas State and blew them out, which was really the first kind of gimme game they've had all year since. I mean, they beat North Dakota, but that was just one of those kind of slogs out of the gate. And then the Iowa game we know came all the way down to the end. So able to just sort of flex their muscles, get some guys off the bench, get Connor Mobley, your backup quarterback, some time to go play and things like that. So that's what you wanted from that game last week, and just to stay healthy. And they did have some health issues early on. I'm not sure really where they are on that, but they navigated them really well, and now they enter conference play, and they've got probably the worst team in the conference in Houston to start things off with. So you feel very good about their opportunity to start off 1-0 in the Big 12, even though this is on the road. Houston's certainly not the most intimidating place to play. So I think it's interesting that this is an evening game on FS1. I guess they didn't have a whole lot of other options just because I don't know how close this game's going to be. So 2 touchdown favorites. I think Iowa State rolls against the Cougars, and I do think that there's no more under the radar for them. They're a top 20 team, and they're going to be a top 20 team next week as well because they have no business losing to Houston. Now, beyond that, I mean, they'll play Baylor here pretty soon, but they've got them at home, and then we'll start to see them get into the mix. But their toughest games are kind of there towards the end, although they do have a West Virginia UCF. But that last couple of weeks, you got Utah and K-State that are waiting there. So we'll see where they are at that point. But right now, I really like where they're sitting. I like their team. I like the core that came back and then just has gotten better from a year ago. And I like what they've got going. So just keep it up and go take care of your business.
Had a ton of people back from their team last year. Beck is playing well. Is it Higgins and Noel? The receivers, and, of course, the running back that loves to run in the snow has had a big start to his season as well. Abu Sama III has only 124 yards, but they've kind of mixed it up. Not really running the ball for a lot of yards per game, but they are winning. They're now number 10 in the country in turnover ratio. 5 picks, 2 fumble recoveries. That's also, of course, a very big deal. Now, K-State.
Yeah, Abu Sama, I think he might have been dealing with an injury here and there as well because he has not been like the bell cow that you kind of expected to be. I feel like that was a part of the issue there for him. He did play last week, but only had 7 carries. So I don't know if they're just kind of they don't need to give him 20-plus carries right now, but he's a really good player, and they're in a really good spot.
Well, it was a blowout, too, so we didn't have to do much. But you're right. He's only carried 29 times in 3 weeks. Iowa 17 for 58 and had a catch or two, too. Now, Kansas State, one of those bruised and battered. BYU pummeled them in the game in Provo, and that game was weird. But that's what happens in Provo, and the BYU Cougars beat them up badly, 38-9. They now got to bounce back, and you wonder, and what a game to do it. You don't lose focus because you're playing someone that you think you can win. This is Oklahoma State, K-State in a bounce-back game.
They both need this really, really badly. And to kind of keep their footing. Otherwise, you lose 2 games in a row. One of them's going to be a 2-game loss in a row, and you wonder about their stability going forward. Last week's blowout to BYU notwithstanding, I still like K-State because they're at home, because they seem to have more stability, throughout the earlier games in the season, what they've got going on, although that Tulane game was nip-tuck for most of it, if not all of it, there. But Tulane's good. And Oklahoma State just has not looked like they did a year ago at all to me this year. I've watched 3 of their 4 games, and in those 3, they just, this is not a team that's running with Ollie Gordon. The offensive line's underperformed, and they're, especially last week, okay, Ollie Gordon shut down. Well, guess what? They weren't getting the ball to those really good wide receivers either.
I know. You're right, and they are struggling, and so something's got to give here. Kansas State, Craig.
Yeah, Kansas State. Avery Johnson is still a deer in the headlights. By the way, I tried to find anything on the Abu Sama injury. Maybe I'm just making that up in my head because he hasn't had a big game, but regardless, I'll be better about that. I think that was just a product of the environment and of a young quarterback and of just not being as good of a team as maybe you'd hope they'd be at this point in time. I think really good teams have rolled into Provo in that situation and come out on the other side of it with a loss. So they're not the first. They won't be the last. But that just snowballed, guys. Like, that was a ridiculous sequence of events in the middle 8 of that game. 2+ minutes in the first half remaining, and then the first few minutes of the second half of, like, scoop and score touchdown, 2 interceptions, like a fumble, a punt return touch. Like, every explosive thing basically that could happen outside of a pick six happened in, like, 5+ minutes of that ball game right there in the middle. It was ridiculous. It went from 6-0 to like 24-6 before you could even like take a breath. It was amazing. The crowd made it more amplified, and I just don't think K-State knew how to handle that. I don't think Avery Johnson was ready for that. And, you know, obviously you have DJ Giddens had the big fumble on the scoop and score. Johnson with a couple picks. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. I don't think it's an indictment on Kansas State. I do think that was as much a product of the environment and also just some of the issues that you're working through right now with the young quarterback who probably was a bit overhyped. And I'll take some blame for that as well because I was super high on Avery Johnson. Still am. It's just he's not ready to be that dude yet. But games like Saturday should propel him towards being that guy eventually. He's still going to have some big performances, and they've got a lot of talent, but that was a wake-up call for this team, and a loss that wasn't entirely unexpected, but was a lot worse than you expected for sure. So they need to bounce back in a big way, and so does their opponent, so that makes for a really interesting game. I still lean Kansas State as well because this game's in Manhattan. That gives them a little bit of an edge, and I just don't think there's much that separates this team, so that tilts them a little bit in their favor for me. And I just like what they've got going. I mean, they're just very similar in just the way that they've kind of been hit or miss this year. But I lean Kansas State to bounce back from that loss last week.
All right, there's Kansas State and their game and 2 teams that need to win. I got a list of the 8 teams that don't have a win, and the most must-win. We'll have that here in a second. Kansas, well, talk about somebody who needs to bounce back. They have TCU, another team on the ropes after getting drilled by SMU in a non-conference game. I just looked this up. I mentioned Iowa State's number 10 in the country in turnover ratio. Guess what Kansas is out of 133 teams?
133?
126.
Yeah, they've...
That's not good.
Look, the best thing that's happened to Kansas this week is that a quarterback tried to shake down UNLV after he beat him. I mean, like that's like, hey, somebody thinks highly of us that we can get more money because we beat them. I mean, 4 years ago, losing to Kansas was the worst thing that could happen to anybody. So good on Lance Leipold for turning that narrative around. But right now they're 1-3. They've lost 3 close games. Baylor didn't have the killer instinct. Well, guess what? Neither does Kansas right now either. And maybe it's because the Jeff Grimes system isn't working. Maybe it's because Jalen Daniels continues to look really rusty and doesn't look like the guy he was 2 years ago. Doesn't appear that they're kind of using all their weapons all the time, and they've got some. But yeah, and in particular, their defense last week against West Virginia had a lead and couldn't stop Garrett Green. So. They have to do better. I don't like this game is really hard for me to pick because I really don't know who's in more of a funk right now emotionally. I mean, like if you're judging by scores, Kansas has been closer to winning in most of their games than the ones that TCU has lost. But I mean,
TCU went off the rails.
Yeah, they went off the rails
and
last week.
Their coach went off the rails, and we'll see.
This is week to week. This is not like just because they got blown out one week doesn't mean it's going to happen another week. But on Kansas's part, like if they can keep it close and maybe win the game, then that's going to spark them on. But this is do or die time for both these teams.
They have TCU at home, and then of course in Kansas City, and then they have Arizona State on the road. Craig?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about playing in close games. You lose by 6 points, you lose by 3 points, you lose by 4 points. There's something to be said for that, but it's been a really unimpressive close score at the end. They completely threw up on themselves last week. Jalen Daniels hasn't been anywhere close to the player that we all hoped that he would return to after most of last year being missed due to injury. Just not a guy who's in the same type of frame of mind and confidence level that he had, but I think mostly not playing in the same type of offense that made him so damn good, along with his own natural skill set. That change at OC has been as much of a problem as some people thought that it could be, including myself, maybe even more so in some cases. And then you take into account that Jalen Daniels is not quite that dude that he was a couple years ago, and that is also a product of the offensive change. And it's been ugly. It's been really ugly for them. Even with a nice run game, you got to have more than that. You can't turn the ball over constantly. And guys, Jalen Daniels hasn't thrown for more than 200 yards this year.
Wow,
he's not thrown for more than 200 freaking yards this year.
Wow, that's
nuts. So that's a stat that jumps out to you, as well as the fact that he has 4 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So he's got to be better. Scheme or not, he has to be better. Jeff Grimes has to be better. And I think that would go a long way for Kansas. It's not all what ails them, but it is the main things that ails them right now, and certainly an area that you thought was going to be much better. Even if there was a little bit of a drop-off from Kotelnicki, you thought it would still be in much better position with all you had coming back than it is right now. So, yeah, this is a must-win for both teams. But I think it's more so of a must-win for Kansas than it is for TCU. TCU's bordering on meltdown mode as well. They had too many hits of that Hypnotoad. So they're off and they're, in danger of getting lost. But I think with Kansas, if you drop a game at home in conference and you go to 1-4, like how are you digging yourself out of that hole?
Yeah.
I mean, what are the reasons to believe that you're going to be able to dig yourself out of that hole? Because it's not as though TCU is some world beater. Kansas is favored in this game, last I checked. So being at home, you got to take care of your business because there's only bigger games that are awaiting you right now.
If you can somehow get back on track and beat another team that's wounded, you have Arizona State on the road, and it's at Sun Devil Stadium.
I love Kenny Dillingham, by the way. He's one of my new favorite guys.
Yeah, I do too. I love listening to him and his just positivity. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Houston at home. So there's a chance here you could get in a run and all of a sudden you're 4-3. But then at Kansas State, home against Iowa State, at right now nationally ranked BYU, Colorado, and then Baylor. So you got to get some now because you've got K-State, Iowa State, BYU staring down the back end of your schedule, along with who knows what Colorado and Baylor will be at that particular time.
Quickly, to not make a bowl game would be a failure.
Oh,
they've got to win
absolutely.
5 more games, and they're running out of games to win out of those 5.
They only have 8.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean,
that's easy math right there. West Virginia, they needed a big win last week. They got it. They found a way. Another delay in Morgantown. Now they have Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State, back to back and on the road against a pissed-off Oklahoma State. But not this week. They have the off week to kind of gather themselves and then get ready for a road trip to Stillwater.
Yeah, big win last week. Obviously, not much to say about them this week, and don't have anything going on. But that was a big win last week. Kansas had a lead in the fourth quarter and let it go. Garrett Green showed that athleticism. He was crazy good, especially in that last drive. That West Virginia needs him to do that more often, like way more often than he has early in the year. They got off to a wonky start, but I'm sure that the people in Morgantown are hoping this starts a winning streak and they can be more like the team they were last year than the team they've appeared to be this season, which is just not very good.
Yeah, I think a couple of their major issues early on, just the inconsistency of Garrett Green. You saw some inconsistency last week, but you also saw some of the clutch ability and some of the good stuff down the stretch and helping you get that win. He's got to continue to be better and improve. He's not, when we all are guilty of overhyping things and whatnot during the offseason. And I do feel like there was a lot of noise about Garrett Green and his status in the Big 12 as one of the better quarterbacks and this and that. And I don't think he's lived up to some of the loftier side of the words that were said about him during the offseason. He's shown flashes, but he's got to be far more consistent for them to be the team that they want to be ultimately. And then your pass defense was atrocious, and I think that's gotten a little bit better. But, yeah, they are a team that could very much use this bye week. I'm sure they're enjoying it. They played a hell of a non-conference schedule, and so I give them the tip of the cap for that because I think they went out there and they, played a Penn State and played a Pitt and weren't afraid to schedule tough teams, and I think that should bode well for them ultimately. But they had to have that game against Kansas last week because if not, they would have been 1-3 heading into a bye week, and that would have been Really,
Stillwater,
a really ugly place to be in for Neil Brown and company. So thankfully, for their sake, they got that win, as ugly as that game may have been at times. And that was huge. That was absolutely huge for a variety of different reasons. So, yeah, heal up, change up. You're probably going to self-scout this week, correct the mistakes you need to make, and just go play a better brand of football and see where it takes you.
All right, we will come back with John Wilner. His thoughts about the Pac-2, 5, 7, 12, and the Mountain West and what's going on there, his pillars of what happens when it comes to realignment, lawsuits, and more.
How about his thoughts on the Big 12? That's where Arizona State.
He covers the Big 12,
Utah.
the Wilner Hotline. That's why we have him, along with some other news as well. And this is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com. They are averaging now 2 to 3 live auctions every single month. When we started to discuss this great business, the Duvall family, and what they've done, the family owned and operated Wagyu beef, Angus cattle on their ranch just outside of Tyler, between Tyler and White House. It's a great story, from their pasture to your plate. They don't mess around. I've seen them and how they treat the animals and how they make sure their animals are constantly they get their shots and the injections and making sure they're clean as a whistle. And then they started these online auctions. A lot of you have bought their product. I have. Jack has. Paul has. And maybe others that I don't know of, because these things continue to go. They now have 3 auctions in the month of October, including next October 2nd and 3rd. That's next week. And then there's another one. And then there's another one. And then there'll be more in November and also in December. Their food, their product is fantastic. You want Wagyu hamburger meat, patties. You want Wagyu steaks, New York strip, fillets, ribeyes, tomahawk steaks and ribeyes. They have them. You want ribeye, you want tri-tip or brisket. They have that. Sausage, they have it. The Duvall family has created amazing business with absolutely spectacular farm-raised Wagyu beef. From the Angus cattle on their ranch to your plate. The next live auction, go to TexasBeefHouse.com or bidonbeef.com, and you have a chance over 2 days to get what you want, to buy meat, beef, at what price you want to pay and not what the sticker is when you go to a grocery store. TexasBeefHouse.com.
At Genco, our goal is to build long-lasting relationships while providing complete financial solutions for each step of life's journey. Our members enjoy fewer fees, lower rates on loans of all types, and higher yields on a wide variety of savings options. That's just a small part of the credit union difference. Visit Genco online, on Facebook, or come by one of our 5 locations today. Apply online for membership. Genco FCU, NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
So much going on today, from the Matthew Sluka story to what is still going to happen, whatever it is, between the Pac and the Mountain West Conference. Plus, oh, by the way, there are games. John Wilner covers Oregon State, Washington State, covers college football on the West Coast, but also the Big 12 with all that happened at realignment, including the 4 corner schools, a part of the Big 12. And, John, thank you very much for your time. Good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
I thought you'd have a vineyard behind you somewhere or something like that.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Not me.
Now, Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoak. Let's start with realignment. And you had your pillars of realignment. And now we have this lawsuit. In your opinion, what's going on? You're kind of tied in out there. What's going on, and what do you think is actually the right thing to do here?
Well, what's going on is that the Pac-12 filed a complaint yesterday against the Mountain West over what is referred to as the poaching penalty. Right? The Pac-12 and Mountain West made a scheduling agreement last year, and the Mountain West included in that a poaching penalty. Whereas if the Pac-12 took a Mountain West school in a realignment move, it would owe the Mountain West $10 million. And it was basically an escalator clause, to the point that now that the Pac-12 has taken 5 Mountain West schools, it owes the Mountain West $55 million. Now, that is not the exit fees that the schools have to pay to their conference. That is what the Pac-12 owes the Mountain West. Pac-12 thinks that this is a violation of antitrust and has taken the Mountain West to court. I think they probably are just going to try to hammer it out for settlement, drag it out, billable hours, and get it from 55 million down to, I don't know what, half that. But that's basically what's going on the legal front. Big picture is these conferences are now at odds because everybody in realignment acts out of self-interest. And yeah, that was one of my pillars, right? Everybody acts out of self-interest. Nobody is to blame. Everybody is to blame. And billable hours are the overall number 1 seed in realignment. That has been the case since, Penn State went into the Big Ten 30-something years ago. It's the same story played out over and over, just different conference names and different schools.
John, what prevents the two conference? What prevented them from just merging in the first place?
Great question. I don't know.
No.
I don't know. They said that they couldn't figure it out, that there were too many, the details were too difficult. I get the sense that there was the Pac-12 schools, Washington State and Oregon State, and the top tier of the Mountain West. They didn't want to subsidize the bottom tier of the Mountain West, right? I mean, Fresno, San Diego, Boise, Colorado State, those schools all have above average valuation in the Mountain West media deal. And if you take all the schools, it's kind of lowering your value. But that's the case. College football is built on subsidies, right? The top 15 or 20 schools subsidize the rest of the Power Four. The Power Four subsidizes the FBS. The FBS subsidizes Division I, and Division I subsidizes Division II and Division III. It's a pyramid of subsidy in college sports. And, you could just pick various instances where it's playing out. And this is one of them. The top Mountain West schools left because they thought they'd get more money joining with Washington State and Oregon State and leaving the other schools behind.
John, when they first started to make their moves last week, it was very interesting. Boise joins and they get that whole contingent, and now we've had this back and forth. But how many questions have you had to answer about Cal and Stanford in the last few days and their availability to be a part of this sooner rather than later?
Well, that came up a ton when the Pac-12 initially announced that it was adding the 4 Mountain West schools. And I think that was about September 12th. It was 2 weeks ago, essentially. There was a lot of questions. Oh, does this mean Stanford and Cal could come back? Does this mean Stanford and Cal want to come back to a reconstituted Pac-12? And the bottom line is they don't want to come back, and they can't because they're under contract with the ACC through 2036. Now, if something happens to the ACC and it blows up and the grant of rights contract becomes void, then sure, Cal and Stanford would be legally untethered from the ACC, and they could come back if they wanted. I think if the ACC blows up, that Cal and Stanford are going to try like hell to get in the Big Ten because it makes a lot more sense for them to be in the same conference with USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington than it does to be in the same conference with the ACC schools. I mean, that was always the case, but Fox wasn't willing to pay for Cal and Stanford to join the Big Ten last year.
So in the end, what's going to happen here? USAF, the Air Force Academy, obviously UNLV, which is now another part of the story today with their quarterback, et cetera. In your opinion, what is going to happen? Is the Mountain West going to be able to keep their core enough to keep it together, or do you feel like the Pac-12 wins out here?
If I were to guess, and I don't know for sure, I think UNLV will end up going to the Pac-12, and that announcement will come at some point in the next 48, 72 hours. And the Mountain West is going to be in big trouble at that point. I think it makes a lot of sense for Air Force to join the American, at least in football, where it would get paired with Army and Navy, right? It's tough to do that for your Olympic sports. They'd have to find another home. I think the Mountain West is in big trouble. And I don't think that any of the top FCS schools are going to make the jump, partly because now, the NCAA implemented that, I think it's $5 million to move from the FCS to FBS. So I think the Mountain West is in big trouble. Pac-12 adds UNLV to get to 8, which is what you need to have, right, for certification. And then I think the Pac-12 is going to try like hell to get Gonzaga and kind of focus on getting some basketball schools as well. So it might end up being 10 schools for basketball and 8 for football, something like that.
John, do you think that who are the other Mountain West schools that they would want, and are there any Mountain West schools that they would not want?
Yeah, there's a lot that they don't want because they lower the valuation. If they can't get UNLV, I mean, to me, the only other one that really makes sense would be Air Force. I just don't know that Air Force wants to do that. Now, if there's no, Mountain West there because they don't have 8 schools, maybe Air Force would think about it, but they don't want anybody else, really. I think the best move at that point, frankly, would be to get Texas State. I think there's a lot of potential for Texas State at the G5 level. For the Pac-12 to have a school in Texas, I think would be a big deal. But I don't know where they're going to go. If they can't get UNLV and they can't get Air Force, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do because I don't really think they want to add any of the other Mountain West schools.
Obviously, this is all a result of the last couple of years of realignment. We've seen the 4 corner schools now start to make their way and begin their Big 12 lives, and Colorado could not have had a bigger splash than last weekend. Utah's become the most annoying fan base in the Big 12, John, especially because they keep winning. And the Arizona schools, it's been up and down for them, although I think there's a lot of promise with Arizona State right now. What have been your early impressions on the 4 corners in the Big 12?
About what I thought, I figured Utah was going to be the best team in the conference. And for them to go to Stillwater and win that game without Cam Rising and just a dominant defense, that's Utah football, right? And if Rising can get healthy and stay healthy, which is 2 gigantic ifs, to me, they are the team to beat. They always have been the team to beat. ASU is better. I don't know that they're very good, but they are certainly better. I think some of that early fanfare, diminished a little bit because Mississippi State is just terrible. Arizona, I was disappointed how they played at K-State, to be honest. I thought that would be a closer game. But the school that I'm most impressed with is not even technically a member of the Four Corners that moved last year. It's BYU. I mean, can anybody stop BYU? You tell me.
I guess we'll see this week, John.
Yeah.
They roll into Waco. Look, the last time they were here, they lost. They had Puka Nacua then. But you know this. I don't know if there's a better traveling fan base in America than BYU. Like, they're going to come in here and make you feel like you're not at your own home stadium.
They will. Absolutely. They've got a lot of fans. They travel well from Provo, but they also have fans everywhere. And this is a really good team, and I'm surprised so far. Their defense is phenomenal. And if the quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, does not make mistakes, he can be loose with the ball. If he doesn't make mistakes, they're going to be tough for everybody. I don't know that they are worthy of, contending all the way through November, but they certainly are a lot better than I expected.
Who in what fan base might be more full of themselves? And I don't use that in a negative way, but they like themselves. Utah, because they've got a resume, and they went into Stillwater and hammered Oklahoma State, or even when they have the ups and downs, Colorado.
Utah, I would say Utah. I mean, Colorado was in the Pac-12 for 12 years, and they did not make many waves at all. They have gotten very into it with the Deion Sanders thing, but if Deion were to go tomorrow to the SEC or the NFL, then you would not hear anything from Colorado fans, in my opinion. They are pretty laid back and not super passionate. Utah fans are very passionate. Part of it is, right, Denver, Boulder, pro sports market, whereas the Utes are a big deal in Salt Lake City, and they're very good year after year. As long as Kyle Whittingham is there, they are, always going to be a playoff threat, especially with 12 teams. I thought you were going to ask me to compare the Utah fans and the BYU fans.
We need to build up.
We
to
like
that.
you, John.
We're not going to ask you to get in between that. But would that not be a hellacious? I know there's a long way to go.
They're going to play,
they're going to play, but an hellacious Big 12 championship game as a rematch for those two. My God, the world of college football in the state of Utah would implode.
It would be awesome to see. Though I think the Holy War is early November, and I'm just curious to see if BYU can hold on and have the Holy War be a game that matters to both sides, because that hasn't necessarily been the case a lot, and Utah has just been the better BYU was the better program for decades, right? Yeah. I mean, great teams with Lavelle Edwards and all those quarterbacks, but the last 10, 12 years, Utah has been the better program, and BYU was hurt by being an independent. Utah thrived in the Pac-12. BYU was hurt from being an independent. So it has tilted. The rivalry is on the field tilted towards Utah. But BYU fans, they are something else.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I was curious, just in talking about all these topics, and I think the last time maybe we talked to you, we kind of touched on a little bit, but the way you have to cover things now, it was, primarily the Pac-12, but now you've got the Mountain West. I know it's all schools out west, but, the Pac-12 was kind of the headliner, but now you've got the Pac and the Mountain West. You've got the schools that are in the Big Ten. You've got the schools that are in the Big 12. You've got the schools that are in the ACC. Just, are you watching more college football than ever, it feels like, or just what's that like on your end to have it so much of a more spread out situation with those schools out west?
It's a little tough. I got to map my day out a little bit more because there's earlier games, but it hasn't been that much different, to be honest. The thing that is the biggest difference is the impact of the playoff on how you watch the games and how you evaluate the results. It's a totally different calculation than it used to be with four teams. I think it's great for the sport. To me, that has actually been a bigger difference for me personally than the realignment of the schools is the impact of the playoff on the results. It's a backdrop to everything in almost every game now.
John, we appreciate you, man. Great to get your knowledge whenever we can as we've merged with whatever the conferences are and whatever they're about to be too, and you give us that insight out in the West, but also what you're doing with the Big 12 and everything else. We appreciate your time. The Wilner Hotline, John Wilner with us on 365 Sports. Appreciate him jumping on with us. He also put out a tweet yesterday. We're going to get to JY, who is the host of the Big Mountain podcast. He's going to join us next. He said Cal and Stanford men's basketball just released their ACC schedules on social media, which was smart. It's the last place the faculty would ever look. So there we are with the basketball schedules being released.
Yeah, I was just curious that last question just because you're not having as many teams playing each other. So it just feels like you've got this larger swath that's now spread over multiple conferences, whereas you're covering 2 or 3 instead. And now there are teams in the Big 12, there are teams in the Big 10, there are teams in the ACC. So, I agree with him, though, that ultimately that doesn't change too much. It's really the playoff. It's just the big thing looming and brewing in the background that is, all things college football now is making that playoff. So that's been an interesting backdrop, and we haven't really even started to get much into that conversation, but we are here pretty soon because it's about to be week 5. So we're getting to that point.
All right. Now, Paul, we are now joined, and I got to get this right. Let me see just a second. By JY. He's the podcast, the host of the Big Mountain podcast, covers the Mountain West Conference, and all of a sudden, all sorts of news going out from that conference, the survival, the lawsuit, who's coming, who's going, who's not, and JY now joins us on 365 Sports. Thank you for your time. So, in your opinion, did the Pac-12's lawsuit scare Gloria Navarez? Because it doesn't appear to be that way with her statement released late last night.
Yeah, hey, thank you guys for having me on. Really appreciate that. I don't think it does at all. I mean, this is what we have seen now with realignment. We saw it with the Pac about a year ago. We're seeing what's going on with the ACC. When you talk realignment, you're talking lawsuits. So I don't think it was surprising at all. And I am not going to be surprised when there's a countersuit by the Mountain West, quite frankly. I don't know that that's coming, but don't be surprised when it does, because that's just the name of the game these days.
What is your gut feeling now about the future?
Well, my gut changes daily these days for the Mountain West. And, my gut right now, and I was able to listen to John here just before you had me on, and I've been following him for a while. He's done great work with the Pac. And, I'm a Mountain West fan, and that was my focus. But when everything went down with the Pac a year ago, I mean, we followed those lawsuits very closely, and we've been following the Beavers and the Cougars ever since. So I've really gotten to know those two schools pretty well, their presidents and ADs and all the changes that they've had. But for the Mountain West, I mean, as we know, they've lost 5 schools. Whether or not they're going to lose a 6th, I think is up in the air. Certainly UNLV is that 6th potential loss for the Mountain West and 8th potential add for the Pac. I think that's at the top of the list for the Pac here right now. And we're going to see, I think, soon what UNLV is going to do. I think they've got a difficult situation in the short term with some of the debt that they have. I think, what they're looking at is trying to get the biggest bang for the buck, in my opinion, as quickly as possible. From the Mountain West, the war chest here has moved from the Pac to the Mountain West. The Mountain West is going to have a significant war chest, if you want to call it that. That's been the term used there with the Pac for a while. And how they divvy that up, we're not 100% sure. We've seen what the Mountain West has proposed. They had a kind of an 8-member MOU. Obviously, that had to go by the wayside when Utah State did what they did. They're working on a 7-member MOU. Of course, there's more money now because of Utah State leaving. So I think, honestly, UNLV goes to the highest bidder, and that highest bidder, if it's, money in their pocket today, I think is the Mountain West. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that's going to happen, but if they're looking short term, the Mountain West has the money right now, thanks to the Pac. So that's where I'm at with UNLV. I think, there's this dissolution smoke out there. I'm not buying it right now, with or without UNLV, and even with or without Air Force, I'm not buying it. I think you've got a strong 5 members or 6 members here. We saw what the Pac went through. They went all the way down to 2, and now they're rebuilding. The same type of deal can happen with the Mountain West, whether it's a 5, 6, 7 member core that moves on. They're going to have plenty of money to rebuild. We know that word has come out. They've already had interest from certain FBS and FCS schools. The top of my list includes New Mexico State and UTEP. There's been some talk that New Mexico State has already reached out. And the top of my list for FCS is Sac State. I mean, you look at Sacramento State, they just, before all of this even happened, just about a month ago, they came out with a committee that's trying to get them to FBS. It's a great market. I believe it's the 20th in the nation. That kind of can replace the Fresno loss, at least for market value. It's a nice partner with San Jose State. So Sacramento State makes a lot of sense, and everybody loves the Montanas. I don't know if they're looking to make that jump. But I know John also mentioned that $5 million payment that it is now. It used to be a very small, was it 5,000 or 50,000, something incredibly small. It's now $5 million. But again, I'm going to go back to the war chest and say, if I'm the Mountain West, I'm giving the $5 million easily to any FCS school in that area that would be interested. Sac State's near the top of my list. And he mentioned Texas, and I agree. I think Texas State, for both of these conferences, would be huge. I don't know if they're looking to leave the Sun Belt. Clearly, that would be kind of the eastern side of either of these conferences. But if I'm both the Pac and the Mountain West, I'm at least calling Texas State, trying to get into that state. So I just said a mouthful there, but that's where I'm at.
That's okay. And what caught my attention with your Twitter feed was when you put out the money breakdown of the 5 schools leaving that leads up to $167.5 million withdrawal fees, bylaw exit fees, departure fees. And if it gets a 6, it's nearly $200 million. And so that's the money you're talking about based on who is leaving. And if there's a settlement, it's still going to be a big, large chunk of money.
Absolutely. It's going to be a much larger war chest than even the Pac had to deal with. In terms of bringing schools in, they're using the war chest to even fund operating costs for the next few years. And the Mountain West, as everybody knows, is going out for a new media rights deal here. What some people say they're shopping it now without even knowing who the members are actually going to be. I can't confirm that, but that has been some rumors. And so, yeah, I just think that they're going to have a lot of money at their disposal to be able to rebuild this. And yes, that's the money. Even with or without litigation, we all know litigations usually end in a settlement. So whether it's potentially 150 million or anything above 100 million, it's significantly more than what the Pac had to use to kind of bring these teams in. So I think there's plenty of money to be had there.
Did you see this coming when they made the scheduling alliance?
Well, I think everybody was very worried about it, which is why they put all of these coaching penalties and all of these extra exit fee costs and whatnot. I mean, it was only natural when all of this happened that the Mountain West was the easiest target. That wasn't their first target. Clearly, we saw what they've tried to do. They originally were trying to get a P4 invite, specifically Big 12 and ACC, and it just has never come. So they clearly have had to move on from that, this being the Pac-2. Their next go-around really was looking at a rebuild. And here on the Big Mountain, we kind of got away from a rebuild because that didn't look like it really had many legs. They were just so focused on getting a bridge in order to have the finances for the next few years to try and get a Power 4 invite. That's kind of looked like where things were headed. Well, then, everything got turned upside down when, those 4 schools kind of switched and said, hey, we're coming we want to go to the Pac. Well, that just changed the ball game there. And, we saw the reporting that happened very, very quickly. I know Jeremiah Dickey, the AD for Boise State, said, when he came in that Monday, he certainly didn't think there was going to be an announcement, I believe it was that Wednesday, that they were joining the Pac. That's how fast all of that kind of came to an end or actually happened. So, was the fear there when the scheduling agreement? Absolutely. Everybody knew it. I personally thought the poaching penalties and things were enough to only allow this to happen for 3 or 4 schools. And we had said that on our channel for a while. We thought that because of the poaching penalties, because of the exit fees, because of what the war chest was for the Pac, they could only really afford 3 or 4 schools. They couldn't afford 8 or so schools unless the Mountain West fully dissolved, which then all that money is it's off the table. There's no more poaching penalty. There's no more exit fee because the Mountain West dissolved. But, if they're not going to take 8 or 9 schools in order for a dissolution to happen, that's why I don't see that happening. The PAC isn't going to take enough schools, and I don't see the schools wanting to dissolve because of the new war chest. But in realignment, I'll tell you, I wake up every day, I pop open my Twitter, and I think, okay, what craziness is going to happen today? Because it's just going off the rails right now.
I'm not taking sides, and none of us really have, on the Matthew Sluka, UNLV, whatever, whatever happens there. He's gone. They're 3-0. They try to move on. But what's the difference in Matthew Sluka making a decision to go to UNLV, and he thinks UNLV reneged on that, whether they did or not, and UNLV saying they're committed to the Mountain West, and then a day or two later they change their mind, and aren't they hypocritical too?
It's a great point. I think everybody's being hypocritical right now. I'm pretty jaded with what just went on with the PAC. I took a lot of the comments from President Schultz with Washington State very literally, in that he wouldn't use that money for poaching penalties. They would use that money for their schools. Well, he changed his mind, and I get it. People change their mind. Sluka changed his mind for whatever reason, and we don't know the true story. The real story. Never will, like you said. And UNLV can change their mind, but you're right. It makes everybody hypocritical. I think it's who can do the most for me today, and I don't really care about tomorrow, and that's just where we're at right now. I will just say from the UNLV side, to take a step back, I give them a lot of credit. They're taking their time here, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if they're trying to get the best bang for their buck. They're playing the two conferences against each other. They have to deal with the governors or the regents, I guess it is, in the state of Nevada and all that kind of jazz. I don't know what it all is. It certainly looks like they've slowed it down a little bit. I don't know the reason, but I give them credit for that because a lot of mistakes can be made when you're in a rush. So I'll give them credit there. I don't know if it's credit that's due or not, but I'll give them the credit.
All right, Jay, are you under house arrest or something that you can't give us your real name? Seriously, I mean, like JY's pretty cool, though, by the way.
Thank you. No, it's Jason. My real name is Jason. I go by JY because I got to be cool. It's
absolutely.
The way of the world.
It's a hip hop thing. And you do a hell of a job, and you've done a great job following this story, and I follow you for it. And thanks for jumping on last second with us. Good luck the rest of the way, and have a great day.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
You too.
JY, Jason, with the Big Mountain podcast, from John Wilner to JY to Zach Gelb. He joins us on 365 Sports, and, of course, Zach with us most every Wednesday in the 5 o'clock hour from Infinity Sports Network, also a part of Sirius at XM. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I think I'm going to go by ZG for now
there you go. ZG with a little bit of dingy on it. Now, what are your thoughts on this Matthew Sluka, the different reporting? Looks like everybody could have done this better, but what are your overall impressions?
So if you put a gun to my head and you said, okay, what do you think happened here? I'm going to say the coach promised something that he didn't have as his resources, and they kept on saying, hey, that this will find a way to get the job done. And then eventually the kid just had enough, and he said, okay, I got to make my money in this time that I can, so I'm going to use my red shirt here. There's no winners in this situation, but when the story first came out, and I don't think we'll ever know the truth, or we won't know for a while, I thought three things, like either the initial NIL commitment wasn't being kept, or maybe after the hot start, he wanted more money and tried to renegotiate, or here was the third option, but I think it would be in response to one or two. Maybe there was another bigger school that came along and said, hey, go use your red shirt. We hear you're having a money problem. We'll give you the money and you could join us next year. So it stinks all around. But if you said, Zach, how do you think this played out? I'd probably say the coach got involved, one of the coaches, and he promised something that he couldn't deliver on.
How many times do you think we'll see this in the future?
Well, there's no relegation of it. It's the wild, wild west. Now, I'm all for players getting paid, but it's so stupid what the NCAA does here. All these coaches, we know this, they talk to these players about money, and, some schools are just better using the right paper trail and with the collective and their relationship with them. Like, we already ripped the Band-Aid off, and also Pandora's box is already open. I don't get why the coaches can't be the ones really running point on this when we all know that they do. So will this be the first time? It's the first time we know about that it happened. Will it be the last? Absolutely not.
Zach, we got to go to Lincoln last week to check out the Illinois game. It had a runza, had the whole experience. It was a great time. Besides the outcome, obviously, a really tough loss for Nebraska. What'd you think of the Huskers and the Illini and just how all that shook out?
Well, I am now banning Smokey from ever being able to go to Lincoln again. We finally got him there, and everything was all bright for the Cornhuskers. Then I guess they were celebrating too much of Smokey at halftime, and that's been a problem for Nebraska. Really good in the first half. Second half, it hasn't been a clean product. But I think Dylan Raiola in the first half looked great, and I even tweeted it out, man, it's crazy how this kid doesn't even look close to a freshman. He looks like a junior. And then his line and himself had some freshman moments and some young moments in that second half. I thought that Illinois was going to lose the game, but I thought they would cover the number. So I thought the game was going to be closer than most, but give credit to Bielema, give credit to their quarterback. Nebraska should still be an 8-win program, maybe at most this year, 9, which is obviously a step in the right direction. But I think this makes them go back to work a little bit and, realize, hey, you can't overturn this thing right overnight. And there's going to be like a tough moment or two here or there before you start to get this thing really humming.
Well, they have Purdue next, and there's no gimmies because they have been capable of like blowing a tire. I'm talking Nebraska.
Yeah.
But the Indiana Rutgers games, one of them is at home, I think, a homecoming. Those two teams are playing pretty well.
Tougher than what we thought it was going to be when the schedule came out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Alabama, Georgia. Alabama, as Keith Jackson used to say, roll tide, all that. What a game. It's an early season game. We need one of these. I thought Michigan, USC was a nice game. Obviously, Texas, Michigan, Texas blew them out. But this game coming up Saturday night, DeBoer, his first real big game as the head coach against Kirby Smart in Georgia.
Yeah, I like Alabama in the game. I was higher on most with Alabama going into the season. I picked Alabama against Georgia in the national championship game, and I did have Georgia winning the game by 10 points. But I love the receiver Williams. Milroe has benefited and will continue to benefit with Kalen DeBoer as his head coach, and I think the Bama defense is going to cause some problems for Carson Beck. The only thing that concerns me is that Georgia, like if I'm trying to pick Alabama here, which I am, Georgia, their last time out, they didn't have a clean product. They only beat Kentucky by 1 point. Mark Stoops, I thought, was coaching scared late in that game. He should have gone for it on that fourth down play instead of punting the ball back. I think Kirby Smart kind of thrives off a game that they won that they could have lost because now he could coach his guys up in a stricter way, and they actually have to listen because they're just not blowing out everybody. But I think this is going to be a classic. Could be a high-scoring game maybe in this one, but I like Alabama to edge them out, Georgia at home.
Zach, one game that's not, it's kind of a fly under the radar a little bit here because Georgia and Alabama are playing is Illinois and Penn State. Illinois is legit. We saw them last week, that they played at great. Luke Altmaier has rebounded from a rough year last year. Penn State's better with Andy Kotelnicki. What do you think about this one?
I think Penn State wins, but I saw that spread is now up to Illinois being a 19-point dog. I would plus the points on that one. Bielema has a team that's going to be competitive. We saw what they did last week up against Nebraska. Okay, can they do that back-to-back weeks? We'll have to see. But I'm curious what Penn State is. I think this is a game that is enormous for Penn State because in week 1, they impressed everyone, beating the snot out of West Virginia, and they followed it up with a very lackluster performance up against Bowling Green. I get that happens when you go up against an inferior opponent and they still won the game, but I'd be very curious how Penn State wins this game because if they win so by 3 touchdowns, all right, you feel more like how you did about Penn State after the West Virginia game, but if this is a game that's close, it's like, okay, this is what Penn State's been under Franklin. They're a good program, but they're far away from being a great program.
Baylor is, and Matt Rule more specifically, is what connects us all here and what eventually led to having this segment, years down the road. Did you get a chance to watch that Colorado result in live action? What were your thoughts?
Oh, boy. That's the nail in the coffin for Dave Aranda. And Dave Aranda's a nice guy. I like Dave Aranda, but you lose a game like that where they almost allowed that touchdown twice with the ball getting dropped, and then right after that, boom, you hit the touchdown. That's a brutal look. But really, my biggest takeaway from it, I'm a Heisman voter, and you put 3 names on the Heisman Trophy ballot. The Heisman's not given out in September, but right now, Travis Hunter, with the award goes to the most outstanding player in college football. He has to be in one of those 3 spots. Ashton Genty out of Boise State, also someone you need to consider, and Cam Ward. We'll see what other names do emerge as you got Beck and Milroe that could still make statements. Nico Iamaleava's having a really good year at Tennessee, even though Tennessee won that game more so because of their defense and their offense up against Oklahoma. But that was a terrible, and like there's bad losses and then there's just brutal, and I mean absolutely brutal losses. How Baylor lost that game, really disappointing. Losses like that can't just happen with how long Dave Aranda has been there now.
Yeah, that's just one of those that, you have BYU, a top 25 team who hammered K-State. If you happen to win that game, it'll be nice if you're Baylor, and a great bounce back. But then you go, damn, we could be 4-1, 2-0 in the conference. Not that it's going to get out of control, but that was just inexcusable, despite the fact Baylor seemed to have a pretty good game plan for that game, in my opinion. Your thoughts, you said, so you have Beck, Milroe, Ewers, who's I know missed a game or 2.
Yeah.
And then Shedeur, but it is Travis Hunter. I mean, he's the one that makes it all go, although Shedeur made the big throw. And then a couple of others. Ashton Genty at Boise State. But right now, is it somewhat wide open no matter what the odds are saying?
Yeah, I absolutely think it's wide open. Like Miami, they should be undefeated.
Yeah.
So if Miami's undefeated, Cam Ward, you probably think, because that award, like it usually goes to the best, the quarterback on a team that is in the college football playoff, or a conference champion. So yeah, I would say right now the front runner is Cam Ward. And Genty, I think for him, he could be a finalist. I don't think he will win the award. And Colorado's going to have to win some games here, because here's what Travis Hunter has that no one else has. He is what Shohei Ohtani is to baseball when Ohtani's allowed to pitch, is what Travis Hunter is to college football. He doesn't take a playoff. He'll have 7 receptions for 130 yards, and then he'll pop the fumble out and the ball out and get a fumble at the end of the game. Like to see that two-way ability, it is really unbelievable. But Colorado's going to have some team success if he's going to want to go win that award.
That is, I mean.
Jackson Dart, too. If Ole Miss continues, don't forget about Jackson Dart.
Yeah. But it is weird to me to see the odds on him right now. Like, he's so far behind all these other players. Like, I would have just figured he'd be somewhere, towards the end of the top, as opposed to, like, towards kind of the bottom of people getting odds, just because of what he's doing has not been done.
I think it just shows you that we all expect it to just be a quarterback each and every year. And I'll give you one other dark horse name, if you want to say. Will Johnson at Michigan. We think of their defense first. I talked to Will Johnson earlier in the week, and I brought up the Heisman Trophy to him. And he talked about how he's focused on the team. But he did say, I've had some conversations with the coaching staff about maybe getting me some burn on the offensive side of the ball. I know he's dealing with the shoulder injury right now. He said he's going to be fine. I don't know if he's going to play this weekend up against Minnesota, but maybe that's something to watch later in the year. If Michigan bounces back, I know they had the win up against USC after losing to Texas, and no one's really taking that Heisman spot. If Will Johnson already has 2 pick sixes, maybe against Ohio State, they let him get into the end zone on the offensive side of the ball.
What would happen if Travis Hunter started to get more involved in special teams and ran a kick or a punt back?
I think we'd all be looking at him like Desmond Howard, right? Like, seriously.
Johnny Rodgers, Woodson, Desmond Howard, Tim Brown, and that was something that they did. Now, most of those guys I mentioned, of course, were on offense, not Woodson was a defensive player, but I think with that, and who knows, maybe they stick him back there and he takes one back 75 yards.
Yeah, so I don't think Travis Hunter, it can't hurt, but I don't think he needs to do anything else outside of Colorado. Just has to win more games. If they win more games, Travis Hunter, you're going to have, if he's not a finalist for the Heisman Trophy, then I lost faith in a lot of my fellow voters. Like, hey, if they only win one more game, okay, I can understand leaving him off the ballot, but it's for the most outstanding player in college football, and he does something at a level that we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, I that would just be if there was a huge moment. You stick him back. He might have one return, but it would be awesome for him if he was to be able to take it back a long, long way. What are your thoughts? We mentioned Matthew Sluka about now the Pac-12 and the Mountain West Conference are having their feud. They had anytime someone ever uses again the term alliance in any sentence, it's disaster.
Yeah, it's
like
BS.
The Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12, and now their alliance scheduling. Your thoughts about what's going to be the end game here?
So I think the end game is to be the premier non-Power 4 conference and to put yourself in an ability with how the structure is for the college football playoff. The 5 highest ranked conference champions get an automatic spot in the college football playoff. It's for the Pac-12 to build that conference where they're picking the Pac-12 representative every year or almost every year. Now, the American Athletic Conference is going to have something to say about that because they thought they were going to be able to get some of their schools, and then those schools said, hey, we're going to stay in the AAC. But this is not going to be something that just because the Pac-12 is back with the brand that we're going to be viewing the Pac-12 in the same breath as the ACC and the Big 12. And you could obviously forget of us ever looking at the Pac-12 in the same breath as the SEC and the Big 10. There's still a difference with those 4 conferences, and I would say the ACC is the worst of those 4 conferences right now. So if you take it even from the ACC to what this relook Pac-12 is going to be, the ACC is still better.
All right, you're taking the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. Minnesota with Darnold, they're red hot. Cowboys they can't stop the run. Giants in a short week, and we know they're not very good. If Dallas goes to New York or Meadowland, what do they call it now? MetLife
Stadium.
Dump. They may not be. If they don't beat the Giants tomorrow, is Mike McCarthy in trouble?
So Jerry Jones, like a lot of people think Jerry Jones is impatient, and that's a misnomer. Like, I don't think the Cowboys are making the playoffs. I said that before the season started. I thought there was too much drama and too many people wondering about their future. But the conversation is going to be out there, and Jerry Jones has already had the conversation. He thinks he'll work well with Bill Belichick.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the year, and you remember when Garrett, he didn't get fired, his contract ran out, and then they moved on from him because they didn't renew him. McCarthy's contract's up at the end of the year. So I'd be surprised, even though he's had 3 12-win seasons, if McCarthy is back. And then the question becomes, can they go get Bill Belichick, and would Bill Belichick want to work with Jerry Jones?
Jerry can talk his way into getting most people to come aboard. I mean, you do that with Bill Parcells. You wonder if Bill Belichick, I think he would like that challenge. That's my thing. Is he like, oh, okay, nobody else has been able to do this, and everybody's saying I only did this because of Brady. I can tame Jerry Jones. This will be a good last ride for both of us. But you are right. People think he's impatient. The problem is sometimes he's too impatient or too patient. He was very patient with the roster this year when now it was time to maybe be a little impatient.
Yeah, and also they should have got the Dak deal done. We all knew the Dak deal was going to get done eventually. They should have got it done before free agency because then they could have moved the money around, and then they could have afforded a player like Derrick Henry. He knew that, so that's why I thought his Derrick Henry comments were laughable. But here's the thing with Bill. Bill's very close to the Shula record. You could go to Dallas, and you could break that Shula record in Dallas. But do you want to win a Super Bowl? Because if you go to Dallas, there could be a better destination out there like Philadelphia where you have a better chance to win a Super Bowl. So it's what does Bill want and what is priority number one for Bill Belichick? Because remember, even though I think the Brady-Belichick argument is stupid, they both needed each other to reach the levels that they did. And I would always say, and Bill would even say, hey, it's all about the players, that Brady was slightly more important than Belichick. Brady did win without Bill. Bill hasn't won without Brady. So if you go to Dallas, you'll break that Shula record. You can maybe make the postseason here and there. But are you probably going to get to a Super Bowl? I would say no. And I look at Philadelphia, Sirianni, man, that guy has really soured. And I've soured on Sirianni, and I'm saying that politely. And they have a good GM in place in Howie Roseman. And I think there's a mutual respect there. So if Howie wants to give a little and Bill wants to give a little, you have Howie pick the roster, Bill coach the team, you'd have a better chance to win a Super Bowl in Philly than you would with the Cowboys.
Hey, by the way, how ironic was it Derrick Henry goes back and plays Dallas where he lives, and he was available, and their run game is non-existent. Now, they may run for 250 against the Giants. I don't know.
And Smokey, I think you'd be better than the Cowboys running backs now.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Even with those hip problems that you got.
Very just okay. And if that – and he goes in there and goes off on them in his stadium. Don't you know, Cowboys fans, that just burned their ass?
Yeah, well, this team didn't get better this offseason. So the only way you could actually make the case for the Cowboys to make the playoffs before the season started was because the NFC is just not a strong conference. So that it wasn't like, oh, the Cowboys are good here and good there and great there and they got better here. No, it's just because the conference has not been as good as the AFC in the last few years. So that's why I picked the Cowboys to miss, because I said, okay, let me have another team surprise and emerge, like, hey, look what's happened with Minnesota or some other teams around the league as well. And the Cowboys, there are a lot of people thinking about their future, and they didn't get better this offseason.
Zach, thank you. I did what Matt Rule demanded I do. We might get him on. He's got to win some more games or we're going to be all over him. But we made the trip. It was fantastic. It's a lot easier to go up there. He had, I think Southwest Airlines may have added a nonstop flight from Dallas to Omaha. Okay. It was phenomenal. Like you said, the fan base is amazing. Big disappointment at the end. But it seems like he's helping them, I'll knock on wood, turn the corner.
Well, Smokey, here's all I'm gonna say. When I went last year, they got destroyed by Michigan. You went last year, they lose to Illinois. So I don't think either of us are ever going to be asked to go there anytime soon again.
And I'm telling you, you say they may get to 8 or 9 wins. I'm still trying to get some sleep. Are they going to get to 6? Thank you.
Oh, they'll
Zach,
get to 6.
Great stuff, buddy. Appreciate you, man, all the time. Infinity Sports Network and the great Zach Gelb with us Wednesdays on 365 Sports. Around the corner, we will have another Big 12 pod to get to. Hope you've enjoyed the content. Hope you've enjoyed what we've had. Garrett Ross and Emery Winter running what they do tonight at 10:30 on the CW. It is 365 Sports tonight. But coming up next, we continue to kind of roll along. And more on the Big 12. And we got another pod to get to. Yes, we do. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Ted Teague, their general manager and CEO, just sent me some new incentives for the month to close out September. 10% off on all 2024 Jeep Gladiators. 2024 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon 4x4, nearly $9,400 off. 3.9% APR for 72 months on all Wagoneer and Wagoneer L. We drove a Wagoneer around Omaha and Lincoln on our trip up there to watch Go Big Red. 3.9% APR, 72 months on all Grand Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer Ls. These are, again, phenomenal vehicles. How about this? The 2024 Jeep Wagoneer Series 3, $9,141 off. 2024 Ram 1500 Tradesman 4x4 Crew Cab Classic, $12,069.75 off. They got down to the cents. 15% on all Ram 1500 DS 2024 light duty 1500s. Ask about their military discounts. Ask about first responder discounts. Ask about special incentives for business owners as you buy your fleet of cars. Ted Teague, the general manager and CEO, a great sales staff. I bought my Explorer from them, a pre-owned car, and I love it. Absolutely love it. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 and east of 84 in Waco.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with a Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
All right, it is time for another Big 12 pod. We'll have another one tomorrow. Big 12 pod. This is UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU. Craig, what's the name of this pod?
No, Craig put it out to the chat to give the name
what
of
did
this
they say?
pod. I got some notes. I got some notes from yesterday.
All right.
When he put it out. So this is either the newbie pod, the scrappy pod, the replacements pod, the rank pod, which I didn't understand that one, the Bob Bowlesby pod, which that's my favorite one, or the staying alive pod.
Craig, you want to?
I like newbie and Bowlesby, and the staying alive is fitting. Maybe we should name it the Bowlesby pod in honor of.
I think.
Yeah,
honor of him
Bowlesby
being
pod.
the one that helped usher that in.
I know he takes still even this day heat, but that has to be in his name.
It's like what the NHL conferences are named after, or no, it's like their conference trophies are named after
like
people.
Conn Smythe.
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
Was Bowlesby those 4, or was
he was those 4.
Okay, that's right. No, I'm thinking about the 4
That's what
corners.
he
You're
had
right.
to do right after
Oklahoma
Oklahoma and Texas.
That's right.
So,
Okay.
I thank everybody for their contributions. I think there are some that definitely could work as well, but I think for the sake of just kind of like specificity and clarity, I think Bowlesby probably works well.
Yeah. So,
let's go with the Bowlesby division, and if we tinker with it later, but I think that's a good start. But, I appreciate everybody who contributed to that. I would, if only BYU wasn't independent, it could have just been the American pod because that was 3/4 of the teams. But that's great that that we had the responses that we had. So thank you.
All right, so we start with UCF. They had the off week. They have an incredible running game. KJ Jefferson did a little bit better last time he was out, and my goodness, the big noon kickoff will be all over in the middle of Orlando. You talk about the Knights, the fans. They will be just absolutely phenomenal this weekend as they host Dion, Travis Hunter, Shador, Wester and company, and the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah, this is not a great matchup for Colorado because of the way that UCF runs the ball. It's at the bounce house. Everybody's excited. Like they're preparing Memory Mall right now for big noon kickoff that's going to be there. And while, I know that the Colorado, because they do it every week, they'll get their shots in, but I just don't think that they can stop KJ Jefferson, RJ Harvey, and everybody else from running the ball right down their throat. Even though they've gotten slightly better at that, this is a mismatch offensive line, defensive line-wise, and the running backs and the quarterback are just too good at moving the ball.
Yeah, this is a really interesting game. UCF coming off of the open week, had the thriller of a win, beating TCU, one of the best wins in program history, and just the style that it took place. And I've loved what I've seen from, in particular, the running game. Still some other areas that need to improve, but KJ Jefferson seemed to put that opening week performance behind him, has gotten better every week, and RJ Harvey's that guy. But, yeah, just as a whole, it's hard to imagine Colorado's defense, even though they are clearly improved up front, of just getting smashed over and over and over again or slipped through by this running attack from UCF, and then sprinkling in the passing game wherever you do. So UCF, last I looked, is pretty heavy favorites in this game, like double-digit favorites, 2-touchdown favorites in some cases, and the predictor machines that I've seen all have them as very heavy favorites at the bounce house. So looking like they've got a very good shot to go 4-0. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. You wonder, all the talk about Baylor and a hangover, what about Colorado?
Yeah.
Like all the emotional outpouring to win that game, they're now going to enemy territory in a place that's going to be crazy, but against them, which I know they're kind of used to that, but there's something to be said for them having a little bit of an emotional hangover as well. They've got the players to make this interesting, but I think UCF's got more of the overall team and the elements at their backing and the rest and all that comes with that. So I like UCF here. And, hey, you start talking about where's BYU rank and where – they win this game, they're 4-0, and they'd be 2-0 in the conference because, remember, they already beat TCU. So they got started before everybody else by a week. So that would be a terrific start for Gus Malzahn and company.
Well, it's Colorado, I don't know if they run on that emotional roller coaster, but they had the was an emotional win against Colorado State, which even Dion said it meant something to him personally. And then they have that game. So there might be a little bit of that. I just think they play so free and easy. Not that they always play perfectly or whatever, but we're talking about UCF. But that'll be interesting. Hell of a game. Great opportunity for the Big 12 with big noon kickoff.
Hey, if Colorado does go and win that game, you want to talk about like ways to get attention on the league. Have a 4-1 Colorado with a 2-0 start in the Big 12. And then have them getting ready to play, I believe it's like K-State and like Arizona, which is not as big of a deal right now, but K-State would be right after that. So that would be interesting because Colorado would probably find itself in the top 25 with a win over UCF. So, and UCF with a win probably finds itself perhaps in the top 25. Or I mean, there's a better chance for that. So yeah, this is an interesting game based on last weekend and Colorado's showing. But I like UCF on some rest here.
All right, so that's one game in the Big 12. We're doing our pods. This is the Bob Bowlesby pod. The 4 schools that joined once Texas and Oklahoma decided they would move on. We now move to Houston. Smoked by Cincinnati 34-0. Iowa State 18th in the country. Kind of a team that just wears you out. Pretty good. Bunch of players back. And Iowa State down in Houston against Willie Fritz and company. Houston, man, they're on fumes, but I don't know what it is. They had the game against Texas last year, different team, different coaching staff, but they almost beat Oklahoma. Now we've seen a little bit of what Oklahoma's about, but the Cougars just in need of playing well. And Iowa State's not somebody you can make mistakes against and hope to have a chance to win the game.
I think when it comes to Houston compared to Iowa State has continuity from a year ago, all that. Houston's starting from scratch, essentially. And that's why this is a bad matchup just on the surface of, look, Houston has to, put all this together. Well, Matt Campbell built a team that's now still pretty much together from a year ago, and it was young guys last year that played above expectations and now are meeting those expectations so far early in the season. So, yeah, I think this is more about – this is Willie Fritz just starting out. Matt Campbell's been in this for a minute, and Iowa State's just deeper and better right now than Houston is.
All right.
Yeah, they're not even in the same plane.
Donovan Smith gets the start again.
Who?
Donovan Smith will get the start, but they are that could be a quick a short leash.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know really what they plan on doing with that, but he's not been good, and I don't know. I found it so interesting during the offseason talking about Houston and Donovan Smith and talking about, like, hey, there's things to like, but there's also a lot of things to not really like that much, in particular the turnovers. And then we started to get closer to the season, and all of a sudden, remember we started talking about all these NFL reports that were coming out on him, or at least these little blurbs and whatnot about Donovan Smith, and like his family's got NFL ties, obviously his father. He's got great size, things like that, and just with somebody, in the draft pre-college football season discussions over the summer, they got brought up a little bit, and I mean, he's done nothing to make that seem realistic. I mean, it's been bad. So 3 turnovers last week helped doom them against Cincinnati, but I think Cincinnati's a pretty good team, and Houston's just not very good. They're the worst team in the league. I think that's pretty clear. I feel like they could maybe with a good performance, like squeeze out a game or two here and there. But if you're losing 34-0 to Cincinnati, even if the Bearcats are pretty good, like that's just that's just not gonna bode well for the games moving forward when you're playing better teams. So I think it's very much a year one. Just trying to take positives where you can get them, and that's about it. But I'm not gonna, for any single second here, think they're gonna really give Iowa State much of a test.
Yeah.
I don't see that. So I think it's going to be another loss for Houston, 0-2 in conference, and I think they're going to pretty much reside in that 16 spot each week the rest of the way. That's just sort of where they are right now, and that's part of just starting over from scratch and what Dana Holgorsen left you.
Zion Chris is the backup. He's from Baton Rouge. He played a couple of years at the University of Louisiana. Played a lot last year. Threw for 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns. He has only thrown 5 passes, but apparently he will get playing time against Iowa State this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. When you say that Donovan Smith will start, I never doubted that for a second. But getting the young guy in there and getting some reps, that makes a lot of sense when you're not building for this year. You're building for next year and the year after, and that's clear. Like maybe if they had won that Oklahoma game and then they, had a couple and they're 2-2, but instead they're 1-3. They're probably going to be 1-4, and we'll see how the rest of the schedule goes. But there's a lot more losses out there for them. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Zion Chris because maybe that's a guy who flashes something, and you can start to build around that. It's just very unfortunate that they have had such a hard time there with Donovan Smith not ever really being able to find that consistency.
Yeah, and the NFL stuff that starts to pop out on random quarterbacks like Graham Mertz and
especially
Donovan Smith in the summer usually comes from Pro Football Focus.
Yeah.
And they have a completely different way of evaluating things than most.
It's not always explained either.
It's not explained like and I'm not knocking their guys, but part of it I think is what Chris Collinsworth likes because he's the head of it and then tells them to look a certain way. So, yeah, I think that's what happened with Donovan Smith in particular is that Pro Football Focus, put all these metrics on him, and then he's like, I don't know if you guys ever watched the full game of him.
I was gobsmacked when I saw the talk about that because I was like, the way that he turned, I get the measurables and all of that. I wondered what I was missing. And I'm not a talent scout by any means, but I've watched a lot of him at Tech and at Houston, and there's a lot of interceptions, and not really huge stats, and so
that's been his MO. Yeah,
I didn't know what that was really coming from, other than his size and all of that. But yeah, that's been totally washed away with the performances through this first month to the point that Zion Chris is probably gonna start seeing playing time. So there you go.
Yeah, and
But hey, you kind of expected this, right? If you were Houston, you knew coming in, you probably weren't going to be very good. I don't know, it might be worse than expected for some people, but you were never, I don't think, anticipating this was going to be some big rah-rah season. This was going to be the toughest season of the Willie Fritz era. That's just got to be what you hope is the case, and I don't see why that won't be the case because I do think he'll get it right with more time, but it's a year one.
He's got the quarterback coming in if he can keep him, the kid from Willis, right?
Yeah.
Where DJ Lagway was.
It's a couple more years, though.
Yeah, is it Willis? It is. He's
players
from
Willis, but he's still 2 years out.
Yeah, he's still 2 years out. Now, Cincinnati, they are the ones who bloodied Houston 34-0. Satterfield and company seem like they got a pretty good thing going on the road against the Fighting Kim Coulters. And Kim kind of has said that he doesn't expect the Red Raiders to lose again. They're on a hot streak after when they beat Arizona State. Gave them their first loss. Kim is all in the middle. And by the way, with the 365 Sports tailgating tent, we appreciate it.
I don't think you got that message Paul and I did over the weekend. I saw a bunch of those pictures.
Oh, no. I'm no longer apparently a part of the Kim Coulter group.
Oh, really?
I go, hey, did you see these pictures? And he's like, no. And I was like, so my bad, Kim. I blew up the spot.
Hey, Kim.
but it looked like the tent is freaking ridiculous.
No, it's fantastic. Yeah,
you're representing us out in Lubbock, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, Texas Tech is the only program ever to play all 12 regular season games at home.
It feels like it really does feel like that.
No, they played at Washington State.
Yeah, but they've only been but the problem that sucks for them is that means their home games are front loaded and they're going to have more on the road in the back.
Arizona, TCU, Iowa State,
all that, which makes it tough, but. I'll take taking this one because they're at home. I think that Cincinnati's certainly an improved team. Their offense is way better. Brendan Sorsby's been good and less of an adventure than Emory Jones was. So yeah, I'll take Tech in this one, but I do think Cincinnati's going to put up a fight for sure.
I think that every coach is going to respect his opponent and talk them up no matter who they are or where they are in the standings and things like that. But I think there was really some genuine backing to that when Joey McGuire was talking about how much he expects this to be a great game and how much he respects Scott Satterfield in Cincinnati. I take Tech here. Big reason why is this game is in Lubbock. I would also take them neutral site. I don't know about Cincinnati. It would be interesting, but I do think Tech's a slightly better team. And I think that win for them last weekend was obviously huge, but that was a big deal for Cincinnati to, find Brendan Sorsby and to get off to this 3-1 start and to handle Houston, especially which Houston just don't really know. Like, they look bad, but then they play Oklahoma with, like, you just don't really know. And then Cincinnati just goes and shoves them into a locker and punks them. And so that was a really good sign that they just handled their business and moved on. I think going to Lubbock, though, and playing at night, there is an element there that is dangerous and probably too much to overcome. But we'll see. Brendan Sorsby's a gamer, man. He's a good player. He's not perfect by any means, but he's enough of a threat that he can go in there and win if Texas Tech, doesn't take care of the football or doesn't play well on defense, things that we've seen this year. They open the door, and Cincinnati's got enough weapons with Sorsby and Xavier Henderson and others, especially that running game and Corey Kiner. They can make this an interesting game. So I do think that Joey McGuire's onto something. It's not just coach speak. I think they're expecting a real fight here, but I will take Tech. I like, though, where Cincinnati is at the start here. And, hey, look, you go and steal one, then shoot.
No.
You're on to a different path there.
Then you have a couple of teams that were thought to be near the bottom with BYU and Cincinnati that maybe they're this year's West Virginia. Who knows? By the way, defensively, both aren't doing well. Cincinnati, 90th. In the country, Tech 120. Offense, though, Tech is the 15th highest-rated offense in America, total yards, and Cincinnati not far behind at 23, so they're very mirror-like on what they're doing statistically.
Yeah, Sorsby's made a huge difference just in making Cincinnati more watchable. Functional on offense. So I've loved seeing him. Hasn't thrown a pick this season. I think that's what's going to – like, who has better quarterback play? Because Baron Morton can be good. He can also be very shaky. Brendan Sorsby's been pretty good. He's had some moments, though, that you'd like to take back, particularly like the Pitt game when they ended up losing what should have been a winnable game there. But, I think Cincinnati is improved, and I think they're going to give Tech hell. But I do feel like Lubbock is a little bit too high of a mountain to climb for them, at least this week.
So I am no longer in the Kim Coulter text chat thing, I guess, huh? All right.
I mean, look, sometimes maybe.
I believe me.
There figured you were with Nebraska.
Really cool pictures that we got.
I have one with
plus
our
stock
friend,
tips.
Retired stockbroker and I talked last night. Then we had one that was a combo with Paxton and Kim, which got off the rails like it always will. Those two now are buddies. I don't mind throwing out stuff that's out there since I'm no longer in the Kim Coulter fan club or whatever. Now, the last team on this list, and BYU coming to Waco, and what a great win against Kansas State. That stadium tomorrow, of Saturday, it'll be filled because there'll be a lot of white and blue. Let's be honest, Baylor fans are on and off, of course, like most are, but will be interesting to see how much of that 40-plus thousand will be the amazing fan base at BYU when they travel because they're everywhere with their religion, but also the love of their football team.
Yeah, they make a bunch of Mormons every day, for sure. But they travel really well. Their team is playing confident and together. Again, like last week, they did some spectacular things happened. The punt return and some other things, but they're getting it done by just not making mistakes. Like that's what they're doing. They muddied the water so badly against SMU that SMU couldn't get out and establish anything. So much so that they changed their quarterback, and they just play within themselves really well. I mean, it's kind of coach speak, but they're not doing things to lose games. And then if you don't do that. If you don't do things to lose games, then all of a sudden you start doing things to win games in Congress with that, and that's what's gone on during this four-game start for them, where they're 4-0. Is just look, You can't control that some of the teams are going to have faster or bigger or stronger guys, but you can control your own mistakes. And when you do that and you make the other guys make mistakes, then all of a sudden you start winning.
Yeah, I think they're much better than I expected them to be. I didn't really know what to expect with BYU, and Jake Retzloff wasn't some sexy name that you're like, oh, they've got this star quarterback and blah, blah, blah. And he's not even like the main particular reason why they're winning either. It's a combination of factors. It's just a great overall team effort, really. But kudos to Kalani Sitake. I mean, he's got them playing really well, playing really confident, and really embracing the fact that not a lot was expected of them coming into this season, and being able to embrace proving people wrong because they believed in themselves. A lot of language like that coming out of that game last weekend, which I just think speaks to a really healthy culture, and obviously that was a huge win in an insane atmosphere. That is not what they're playing in this week. I think that matters. I think playing on a Saturday night, Mountain Time, at home, full whiteout, and then you have just the avalanche of turnovers and touchdowns and just that middle eight that you see a 6-0 lead for Kansas State turn into a 31-6 BYU lead in like less than 30 minutes or whatever. I don't remember what actual time it was, but you take the middle eight, and they pretty much took 6-0 and made it 31-6 practically.
Yep.
And I don't foresee that. But I mean, what an amazing just. I use the word I mean, it was just like they just took
Momentum's
that game.
a hell of a thing, man.
It was the moment. I've never seen momentum like that. I mean, it's just over and over and over until like just that crowd. I don't think they could have gotten louder, or else that whole place would have just blown up. I mean, it was so chaotic. So that's not what they're walking into this week, but they will be walking in with a lot of confidence. This is basically a toss-up game. Retzloff's played well. That defense has been outstanding. That SMU game, they held SMU to 5 field goals. They didn't give up a single touchdown in that game, and that's what they're going to probably be able to do for the most part against Baylor. Baylor's going to have to score touchdowns in this game. They cannot settle for field goals. They're going to have to score touchdowns, which is easier said than done, but especially given that Jay Hill, heart attack, the whole episode, and not that long ago, mind you, the fact that he just got back to work and this defense is playing so well is an incredible story. They obviously did what they did against SMU to K-State by holding them to field goals as well. So in their two big premier matchups, they've given up they've given up no touchdowns.
Yep.
Now, those turnovers last week, you look at where they were, a lot of those were like at the 30 of Kansas State was driving, right, and just could not seal the deal, whether finishing a drive or turning the ball over. So they can be moved on, but man, they will make a big explosive play, and they will bottle them up, and in the blink of an eye, you could be down big. So Baylor's going to have to avoid the big mistakes. I mean, they're just going to have to find a way to avoid those, because I think that's ultimately what this game comes down to. I don't think anybody else imposes their will on the other. I don't think one's more like that much more physical than the other. And I don't think there's really many matchups where you're that much more impressive than the other. I think it's going to come down, like most Big 12 games will, to home field advantage and also who makes the least amount of mistakes.
If there's home field advantage.
I mean, there usually is, maybe not in this case.
Yeah,
but
because BYU's bringing some folks.
Well, BYU's not going to have a home field advantage, not like they had last week.
They will. It's not going to be like there's just 500 people either.
No, Sawyer Robertson should not be panicking all, like Avery Johnson in that environment last week, which was understandable to some extent. So I like BYU. They need to be mentioned with the top tier. They're top 25. If they win this weekend, man, that's really setting them up nicely, because you'd be nearly at bowl eligibility. So that would be an incredible win to get on the road and have 2 wins in the state of Texas in the first 5 weeks.
Absolutely.
Would also be a really big deal for them, and it's entirely possible.
Greg Wrubell, the voice of BYU, had this note earlier. He's had some great nuggets. BYU point totals allowed 13, 15, 14, and 9. Under Dave Aranda, even with the team in 2021, Baylor is 0-13 if they score less than 20 points.
That's a damn neat stat. The worst one to me is the 0-9 in their last 9 top 25 games.
Who?
Baylor.
Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, no, I know.
That is
I know.
ridiculous.
Yep.
0-9.
And they can get one this weekend, but I think I'm going to pick BYU to win the game until – and again, I liked what I saw from Baylor in Boulder in many ways other than 3 or 4 brain farts.
I wrote this in my article today. Do you know the last time Baylor beat a top 25 team?
Ole Miss?
Yeah, it was the Sugar Bowl against Ole Miss 2 years ago.
Yeah.
was the last time.
Actually, yeah.
The Sugar Bowl win. They are 0-9 in the last 2 seasons, and so here we go. They're going to either be 0-10 or they're going to get a very much needed win, and BYU will have that first blemish on their record. But these two have a short but pretty good little history. There's obviously a lot of respect between the two fan bases, so I think it should be a fun environment. And I'm leaning Baylor just slightly, but if you pick BYU, I don't fault you at all.
I said it in my prediction today, and I picked BYU. I think the thing's the same. Like, there are better things than last year, obviously. Like, there's a lot of good things that you can compare to last year. But for me, they're still lacking, and it was just highlighted last week. They don't have any assassins.
Yeah.
They just don't have it. And Colorado does. And their assassins are also like the elite.
Yeah, do they have a Travis Hunter?
No.
Do they have a Shador?
Well,
No.
But thought they had a guy in a Caden Jenkins who was a pretty big baller. We haven't necessarily seen it because the secondary hadn't got flushed out that much, but in the opportunity, he's fallen down next to Wester, the biggest play of the – you know what I mean?
So, that's where the team is overall elevated. But
you know, it would have been better to have run over Wester for pass interference, and then they take a snap at the 25, right? Or is it in the end zone? Is it different?
It depended on where he hit him.
How about you just keep your feet and bat it down? That would have been great.
Yeah. Or how about not taking the wrong rush on the edge, which they did, where it was supposed to be, oh, my goodness, the young man that had Garmin Randolph had a pretty good – I thought Linton played well, but, again, they took the wrong angle. We know it's over. Now Baylor, BYU. All right, when we come back – and, Kalani Sitake will join us tomorrow on this show on 365 Sports. Paul's Top 5 is next.
Fantasy Sports EVO, the next evolution of daily fantasy sports. Tired of traditional fantasy sports where you spend hours upon hours studying individual players? EVO's unique team-based platform makes it easier than ever for all sports fans to play. No need to know individual players. Just choose your contest, select your teams, and enjoy the game. Whether you access our website from a desktop, mobile device, or the app, the experience is the same. EVO is for all sports fans. Join Fantasy Sports EVO and experience the evolution.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Hello, it's Wednesday, and it's the Top 5, which means the show's almost over. So I'm sorry that your day's about to get worse, because it always does when the show ends. I know that. But to pick you up on the way out the door, here's my Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Use our promo code 365sports for a discount on checkout when you go to betonbeef.com. Top 5 things we need to admit. Number 5, and this one's for me. Is Clemson good again? I think Clemson's good again. Now, granted, their offensive explosion has come against 2 teams. Also, Appalachian State, if you heard me mention on Monday about defense in the state of North Carolina, from North Carolina, that don't play defense. But they weren't scoring 50 points against anybody a year ago. It looks like Garrett Riley finally has his sea legs. They're running more of his concepts than the old concepts. And Cade Klubnik is really looking good. They're moving around the pocket. They're letting him use this athleticism. They're a force again in the ACC as we stand right now. They are good again. Now, are they good enough to contend with the Georgias of the world and the SEC teams? I think we've seen that proven out that probably not, but this team is not dead. Not dead. I'm saying I was wrong. I was starting to kick dirt, and that might have been more enthusiastic than it needed to be. But Clemson, they're good. They're quite good and are going to give some people some headaches this year. Number 4, is Tennessee a complete team? One of the things we said about Josh Heupel so far is, they have this great offense, but they can't stop anybody. Ask Oklahoma how that's going. They're stopping people. They shut down NC State. They shut down Oklahoma. They're only going to get better because this team is coming together and gelling in a way that you would not believe. If you watch that Oklahoma game, it meant a lot to Coach Heupel, obviously because of his ties to Oklahoma and the fact that he's a hero there. It meant a ton to him. And they coalesced behind him. They got up behind him, and they drilled his alma mater in their place. That's the sign of a team who can do some things. We haven't even gotten to Nico Amaliava yet, who is the truth. I don't know if he's worth $8 million, but right now everybody in Knoxville is saying he's worth 80. He's performed very, very well, and he's just a redshirt freshman. Number 3. Michigan can win without passing. They can straight up Iowa this thing for a little while. They threw for less than 50 yards, less than 40 yards, just over 30 yards in the win over USC. Now, if you have to rely on big, long runs the entire time to score points, that's probably not good for Michigan. But you want to talk about a gutted-out win against a team that offensively should have overmatched you? Michigan's win against USC was that. So congratulations, Sharon Moore. Your quarterback change worked for at least a week. This is a run offense. They're not going to throw the ball all that much. They might as well get in the power eye and go old school Nebraska with Alex Orji at quarterback. Kal-El Mullings, I want to call him Kal-El because of Superman. Kal-El Mullings, fantastic last week, and might have leaped Donovan Edwards in the effectiveness when it comes to that running back depth chart. But they can win without passing, so don't just automatically count them out because they can't light up the scoreboard. Number 2, chaos is coming if it's not already here. If this week taught us nothing or taught us anything, if we learned nothing and it taught us anything, is that chaos is coming to this season of college football. The 12-team playoff puts everything in flux, and it's awesome. When you have Tennessee beating Oklahoma like they did, or BYU blowing out Kansas State, or what's going on all over, and the kind of balancing out of talent, at least in the middle, not necessarily at the top, but balancing out of talent in the middle that we've seen due to transfer portal, we're going to see some chaos. This is not going to be a nice, tidy season. And the 12-team playoff makes that so much better, but get ready for some chaos because we've already gotten a little appetizer of it, but it's about to be the full meal. And number 1, this was all Greg Sankey's master plan. The SEC looks masterful and magical. They keep winning. They keep kind of fighting their way through tough times. They have great games in conference. Missouri-Vanderbilt was one of the best games I watched all weekend. And just like Dr. Evil says here, and the best part of the plan is, no one can stop me. Who's going to stop them? This was all Greg Sankey's master plan. The SEC is running the show. I'm sorry, Big Ten. I know that you think you're kind of in this thing. You're not. You're just the biggest one of the rest of us. All Greg Sankey's master plan. That's going to do it for this edition of the Top 5. And it's about to do it for this edition of 365 Sports as we wrap it up right now.
Who is that guy again, the actor?
That was Mike Myers.
Yeah, Mike Myers. All right, tomorrow we have Max Olson. We have Sam Kahn. I've already checked in with them. And then again, Kalani Sitake, among others. Craig's Off the Radar. Every day, Paul's Top 5 here on 365 Sports. For Garrett Ross, thank you, Garrett. Emery Winter. Who complimented me, Emery? LFG. Yeah, LFG, let's effing go, right? Isn't that what he's for? Also, thank you to our great sponsors. Every day you see a lot of them behind us on the screens that we have. We appreciate their support. Don't forget, when you can, a super chat. Not asking, but it's there. Appreciate your support by being here. Hit the like and subscribe button. For Craig Smoak, Garrett Ross, also for Emery Winter and Paul Catalina, Jack McKenzie, and our entire company, 365 Sports. I'm David Smoak. Good night.